Councilman Gary Donovan, Councilman at Large here.
Councilwoman Colleen O'Connor, I believe is absent. Councilwoman Bridget Hosky.
Councilwoman Bridget Hosky, 1st District, present.
Councilman William X. Conlon.
Councilman William X. Conlon, 2nd District, present.
Councilwoman Liz Johnston.
Councilperson Liz Johnston, 3rd District, present.
Councilman Mitch Gagliano.
Councilman Mitch Galagnano, 4th District, present.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton.
Councilwoman Robin Hamilton, 5th District, here.
Councilman Peter Massaro.
Councilman Peter Massaro, 6th District, present.
Councilwoman Trenae McGee.
Woman Trenae McGee, 7th District, present.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli.
Councilwoman Crystal Finelli, 8th District, present.
Councilman Robert Bruno.
Robert Bruno, 9th District, present.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen.
Councilman Barry Lee Cohen, 10th District, present.
And Chairman Ron Quagliani.
Councilman Ron Quagliani, Council at Large, present.
Thank you, Stacy. So we have before us finance, purchasing, risk management, and information technology. So Dave Richards, you'll be staying on, and Frank is here with us. I don't see anybody else, correct?
Robert Sandell, I'm here for risk and purchasing.
Oh, great. Hi, Robert. Thank you for joining us. I'm very well. Thank you so much.
Hope everyone's staying safe. Just so you know, as you called the roll, some of you I can hear very well. Some of you sound muffled and like it's kind of in and out. So
you can hear me well, right?
I can hear you well, correct.
Okay, well, thank you for letting us know. We will definitely, if you find that happening during the evening, just let us know. That would be perfect. So what we normally do is we do a roundtable. Frank, I don't know if you want to go first, but we generally, what we do is you give a presentation, tell us anything that you'd like us to know. We ask that while you're talking, we only have one person speaking at a time because there tends to be background noise or static. And once they're done talking, we will do a roundtable of questions with the council people. They will limit their questions to 2 each turn. And then when they come back around, they can ask additional questions just so that everybody has an opportunity. During the question and answer period, we do ask that you mute while they're talking. And then when you answer, unmute and they will mute, just so that we don't get a cross feed. Frank, do you want to start?
Sure, I could start. So I don't know, there's a lot of numbers. I'm not comfortable talking to numbers, but you should have all gotten an email from me this evening, hopefully. I sent it around 5 o'clock, right before I left the office. So I'll walk you through the controller's office. From the personnel perspective, we are budgeting to remove 2 positions and add 1. We are removing the payroll person out of finance. There is a payroll and HR position that was created within personnel with the expectation that that individual would be the liaison with ADP. And they would be primarily responsible for consolidating all the payroll data and getting it to ADP on time, as well as assisting Beth and personnel with HR and benefits questions. The other position that we're eliminating is there's a revenue collection clerk. It's a junior accounting or junior finance position. She currently does the mail as well. So we're going to eliminate that position. I'd like to give the mail to somebody else whom I have in mind. We're creating a junior financial analyst position. This position would be more in line with supporting Bob Z with the general ledger and the trial balance providing more support to Ray throughout the budget process and assisting me with gathering data and doing some analysis for yourselves and for the MARB. So the net impact of those changes would actually be a reduction to the payroll in comptroller. And that is.
Tell me what page that is, because it's just more helpful.
Page 49.
Page 49. Okay, continue.
So it's a net reduction to the payroll expense. And again, because one position is being transferred to personnel. As you go through some of the other lines, in the analysis that I sent you, we put in $17,000 for overtime, and that was based on a 4-year historical trend. But as I started digging into that, it became apparent that the large overtime that was happening in 16 and 17 and part of 18 was for one individual. That individual has since been moved to a 40-hour position as opposed to a 35-hour position. So you could see in fiscal 19 and 20 that the overtime cost drastically reduces. So what I'd like to do is move $10,000 out of the overtime and bring it down to 7, and move that $10,000 to financial services, for the reasons being that Bloom Shapiro, who won the bid for our auditing costs, auditing firm, is $5,000 higher than I had in the original budget. So I'd like to add $5,000 there, and I'd like to add $5,000 for Milliman, as I am expecting to need them to do an analysis that's MARB related in the next year. You could see on the file that I sent you a breakdown by vendor of all of the costs that make up financial services. Big numbers in fiscal 19, and you can see that's when we had the one-time charge for Bloom Shapiro to do their consulting to review all of the munis and some of the financial aspects, as well as the UHY advisors who assisted with the original 5-year plan. So a lot of those costs are one-time, non-recurring costs. One item you'll see there, third from the bottom, Diva Solutions. That is the company that we have been using to generate the 1095s. As we talked about last night, that will now be absorbed by ADP. So those costs go away on a recurring basis. So that's $20,000 of savings to my budget anyway. Finally, on the consulting line, I'm taking that number down to $50,000. We had 125 in there for the current year. That was because we did not know what to expect from the HR study or anything else MARB related that they would want us to do. You could see that I'm projecting that we will end the year at roughly $76,000. Part of that money has already been transferred in your last meeting. A part of the long page of transfers that I had given you was to move some money out of my consultant line to cover costs in other departments. But next year I'd like to keep 50,000 in there, only because typically consulting is going to happen, I think, as long as MARB is around. And I really don't want to have zero in there. Worst case scenario, or actually best case scenario, we don't need it, and we can repurpose that money next year. So overall, the budget would, for my department, would come down by 12%, or 11.68, again being driven by the movement of that one individual out of finance into personnel. And that's all I have.
So I just want to ask a question real quick. So you went down 12%. Personnel is going to go up that amount, correct? I can look, but I just figured they would actually
go up a smaller amount than that, because I'm also dropping what, 80,000, 75,000 out of the consultant line that they're not picking up. So they would go up by roughly $60,000. But still, at the end of the day, between all the movements, there is a net savings to the city.
Chairman, I don't know, what are your thoughts? Should we have Dave and Ray go, or do you want to ask questions to Frank now?
It's your preference.
I know, but I asked your opinion, so.
I'd ask questions of Frank now, and then we'll move on to.
That's what I was thinking, but yes. Councilman Bruno?
Thank you, Bridget. I appreciate it very much. So Frank, I'm understanding all the moves here, but where is ADP getting paid from? Where is that coming out of?
There's currently a line item in the contingency other section of the budget, which I believe is page 100, if I'm not mistaken. Page 100, there's a line item for city portion HR payroll outsourcing of $170,000.
So really, we're not really saving any money because it's coming out of the contingency fund. So we're not saving money. We're just moving it.
We're moving it around, yes.
Right, but there's no savings.
Correct, but from my particular budget, you would see a reduction. But yes, you're right. No necessary savings to the city from the payroll end of it.
Thank you, Frank. Bridget, those are my two questions till you get back to me. Thank you.
Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Councilman Hosky. Frank, I have two questions, at least for this go round. I want to bring our attention back to, if we could, to the junior financial analyst, which is page 49, the last line. And I know that you explained the new position. And when I was listening to you, all these positions and as you know, Frank, you've been sitting in most of these sessions for all these departments. Many of them are justified, and I'm going to say the same thing to you that I've said to a couple of the departments. It's really the nice to haves and the needs to haves. We have an unpredictable year next year, post-pandemic. And I'm one of these guys that want to build up our contingency fund as much as we can, as I know we've discussed in the past about, building up our bond rating as well as that emergency or whatever may happen given what the state and or federal government may or may not give us. And because this junior financial analyst was something you never had before and is value, is it essential that my first question being, if we did not spend the $54,000 for the financial analyst, and I'm not saying that we remove the money totally, but we put it in a contingency because based on what MARB is doing, we don't get any benefit by lowering our budget because then we just get less MARB money. But we take that $54,000, I'd rather build it in the contingency. So I'm trying to get a really return on investment reason why we would absolutely need the financial analyst, especially given Councilman Bruno's point that we're really not saving any money. We're just moving it around. So here's an opportunity to quote unquote move around the $54,000 into a fund that we may very well need that might benefit the city better moving forward. Not to say it's not an important position, but is an absolute essential needed position. Can you address that first question, please? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. One thing to realize, though, is if you decide to remove that $54,000 for that individual, you would need to replace the revenue collection clerk because that is a full-time position that I cannot do without. She is the individual who spends quite a bit of time making sure that all the revenues that come in to the city are classified correctly and booked through accounting, as well as additional jobs. We're just trying to expand the scope of her responsibilities.
Okay, so it's an okay. So he or she, would still be doing those same responsibilities.
Correct.
Plus more that you explained.
Plus
okay.
Plus additional accounting support.
I don't want to waste my second question, so I got to go right on. Okay, this is it. I want to bring your attention to page 50, please. And I'd like to go back to financial services. And based on the email that you sent just prior to us meeting this evening, and I haven't really had a chance to totally review your attachment, although you did review it for us just now, is you said that you took an average of the prior years to come up with the original 207,500, correct? You took an average. Is what, at least that's what your email said. Did I misunderstand it?
No, the average was for the overtime, 17,000.
The average was for the overtime.
So
Okay.
we had, in 17 and 18, they were close to $20, and then it dropped off after that.
And I guess what my question really is then, and thanks for the clarification, is the financial services this current year was 195,000. You've explained and clarified why you need another 10,000 from your email you just sent this afternoon. I'm trying to wonder why there was this other 6% increase from the 195 to 207. I'd like to keep that spending flat at 195 and then give you the 10,000, reallocate the 10,000 so you have a total budget of I can't do math in my head now, of 205. Am I saying that right? Yeah, of 205. So I'm wondering to myself, would that be a major concern if we just upped it at 195 and then added the 10,000 on versus giving you that automatic increase? Or you have the 207.5, which basically pays for the additional financial services you just described. So we might be able to.
The individual line items that I have on the page that I sent you are pretty accurate. The first line, which is the PKF O'Connor Davies, which will become Bloom Shapiro, that cost, it will be 149.5. So you've got an extra 500 there. The Hilltop Securities is an absolute number. It's 62.50 per quarter is the retainer for them. They are the bond counsel, bond advisors. Brink's Armored Car is averaging out to, it will be within $10,000 of this year. I mean, it doesn't move very much, but that is where I'm expecting it to land. The only thing that you may have some wiggle room on is I put in $10,000 for Tyler Technologies. That's going to be training for Munis. And that's going to be something that MARB is requiring us to do. We are, as part of the Bloom Shapiro report that came out a couple of years ago, from what I've read, Munis is being very underutilized. Some of it is because individuals just don't know how to use it. Some of it is because they've been trained and have not used it since then. The goal here would be to actually hold training sessions with the appropriate individuals to make sure that Munis is used to its full extent, as long as we're paying for the licensing fees. That's a rather long-winded statement to say that I don't have a lot of wiggle room in that 217. Most of it are real numbers.
I'll have to review your sheet because I didn't have a chance to really go through it. And I can't ask this question unless you want to answer it, then I'm going to have to say goodbye. Is how much is the Munis subscription? I'm sorry, the membership that we pay to that.
Dave, it's in excess of 100,000, isn't it?
It's 178,912.
And we don't use it. We're spending $178,000 for it. Okay, I can't ask him a question, so.
We use it, but we don't use it to its full extent.
I'll come back. Thank you, Madam Chair, for your patience. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, David.
Does anyone else have any questions for Frank? Chairman?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Frank, page 98, the health insurance line. So I know we've spent especially you and the mayor and everyone has spent an awful lot of time with the MARB and the unions and the Connecticut Partnership Plan to identify savings. it seems the number requested for this year, for next year, is the same as the number for this year. Is there any savings?
Yes, there's, that's a great question because that was going to be another conversation I had with you, is that in fiscal, where are we, 19, we had to make a payout for a former employee. I won't mention the name here because we're not in executive session. But it was very substantial. It was a Board of Education individual. We made the payment, I believe, Mayor, to the estate of, I don't recall if she had passed away or not. But long story short, there were a number of checks that were never cashed. We ended up having to pay for that. They took the money from the like an uncashed fund, cash checks fund that they maintain here. So $200,000 was built into the budget. I erroneously put it into the health insurance line that should have gone into contingency to refund that line or that fund. I've asked Bob Z to provide a narrative to explain it better because I'm not doing a very good job here, but he was intimately involved with that whole situation. So yes, we are seeing savings. If you'd notice that in 2000 or 19, fiscal 20, we were expecting $10 million to be the cost. We're expecting roughly the same amount, a little less in fiscal 21. So you're seeing a flat amount year over year when you should normally expect to see 7 to 8% growth on that line item. So that's roughly $800,000 worth of savings.
So you're going to back out a couple $100,000 from that account and ask us to transfer it somewhere else? Is that what you're saying?
Transfer it down to contingency other, and as soon as Bob responds to me, I'll forward that information for your deliberations next week.
And the medical runoff piece. So that's so I know we were at Anthem, and now I think we're at Oxford, but I think we may be going back to Anthem. And I thought a medical runoff amount was much higher than that number. What does that 155 represent?
Good question. So the 155, the medical runoff, is kind of a 3% buffer that's built into the budget related to the self-insured healthcare. So and that's specifically why we broke out on page 98, we broke out the partnership plan versus the retirees. The retirees are still self-insured. So that 3% is really 3% of the 5.1 and no longer 3% of the 10.7.
So that'll continue as long as we are paying separately for the retirees, right?
Correct. I think until we can get the enough data that we're comfortable with locked in or Anthem's projections that we use for those numbers.
Okay. That was my medical question. We switched to bonding.
Yes.
So I see, and thank you for breaking out all the bonding, the water pollution as opposed to the Board of Ed, as opposed to the city. So in the city's 13.
Can you tell everybody what page you're referring to? Just the new council members may not know.
Sorry, page 99. So in the recommended budget for the city bonds, it's 13,955,402. Out of that number, what reflects, if any, FY21 bonding?
Okay, I just opening up the file here so I can get it. Let's see. Here, data. Raw data, here we go. Proposed. Bear with me just a second.
Sure.
Here. Oops. Project. Okay, it is purpose. Is that the one? No, issue date. Over here talking to myself. Hang on. Project annual. Okay. Issue date. Proposed. Okay, so within the overall 1.9 million relates to fiscal 21 budgeting or bonding rather. $11,000 is the city portion. The majority of it, $1.4 million, relates to the Board of Education, and that would be the first bonding on the high school project.
Right, but you have them all, you have them split out, right? So I would assume that the Board of Ed bonding is for the high school project, right?
Correct. So the city, let's see.
The city's got 13.9 for this year. So how much of that would be new debt and how much is that just the annual payment on old debt?
That's 13.9. CIP proposed. Oh, okay. It would be WPCA, and the pension is out of it. Okay, so of the 13.9, and clean water comes out. 13,955. Okay, of the 13,955, $545,000 relates to new bonding.
Okay. Thank you, Chairwoman. I'm all set for now.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? I'm going to take my turn, Councilman Gunn. If no one else, okay. So I have a laundry list, Frank. At this time, do you believe that the city has cash flow concerns?
At the moment, not that I could tell. ECS money should be coming in within the next month. It all depends on what happens with the taxes that go out in July, right? So I'm trying to work up a model for cash flow with different scenarios, so I could see what the pressure points are going to be.
You mean like how long we could last?
Correct.
Our bills?
Correct. So, for example, if nobody, if the only ones who paid the taxes were the institutions and the banks that had collected through escrow, if nobody else paid their taxes, what would that impact be? Right. So,
because we said 50% of the people only pay through escrow, right? What was the number?
Right. $25 million would be the exposure if nobody paid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's from the revenue side. I'm trying to figure out from the expense side what that is. One thing to remember is that the high school project is costing us $2 million a month. And there's a lag between, the expenses that we put out and the money coming in from the state. So usually a 1 month lag. So we're trying to build that into the model as well.
Right. Benefits for a new employee. What is that cost?
We are using the family assumption, which would be, well, depending on the union, it would be roughly $60,000 to $70,000 a year per new employee.
Oh, I laughed out loud. I hope. So, wait. So, okay.
So we have.
Employee that we bring in.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. A new employee that we bring in, their salary could be hypothetically $55,000, but we could possibly pay out more to insure them.
Depends on, it depends on who you bring in, right? So if you're bringing in young people, right? If you're bringing in young people, the odds are that it's going to be single or married, right? We, for budgeting purposes, we use the family assumption because it's a higher cost, rather to be conservative than to come in with a deficit in that line item.
No, Frank, I appreciate you in ways you can't imagine. So, hypothetically, just so that I know when you're keeping me up tonight, stressing out, what is a single person's health insurance?
Let's see. Let me see if I have the file here. Model, general fund model. All right, so care. Currently, the monthly amount for a single individual that we pay to the state is $1,000 a month. It is $2,200 a month for a couple and $2,800 a month for a family coverage. And again, that's the gross premium. That does not take into account their contribution. And again, depending on the union, it could be anywhere from 11% to 16%.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Go ahead, Chairman.
Well, I just want to follow on to that. So Frank, there's 294 employees. So if we do 294 times 70,000, it's $20.5 million.
Yeah, something's not working out here.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. It's 30,000. I was looking at the salary line in my new hires page. So it's roughly 30,000 a year for the assumption is for a family, for the city cost.
Okay, so now you've only given me nightmares. Thank you, Frank. I could go to sleep tonight and just dream painfully. I don't even know what to do with you right now, Frank. So did I have my two questions, Councilman Cohen?
No, I think that was only one.
Oh, good. So I do have a follow-up question because all this matters to me. And this is, so hypothetically speaking, because I want to know this, not hiring a chief in Allentown that past year, a permanent chief. We have an interim, I don't know what we call him, but Chief Esposito is an amazing asset to the city, and we appreciate everything he's done. But not having hired anybody in Allentown thus far permanently for a chief in 2020, how much money has that saved? And are we putting that money into the firefighters' pension? Are we going to split the money and put it in the contingency? I want to know. We are in May, and there's no way they're getting a chief in by the end of the year. So what are we doing with that money What is the actual savings? And how is that money going to be reallocated?
So we had a budget of $56,000. It was a half a year for that position.
Tell me again, 56,000?
56,000. We cannot put it into the general fund contingency. It would have to stay within Allentown. So
I meant their fund. Like, don't they have a rainy day fund? I don't know. Am I getting the words right?
they have a fund balance just as we do.
Oh, okay. That's what I'm talking about, putting it in their rainy day.
Correct. So if we don't spend it, it would just automatically just flow right into their fund balance.
Why? Why would we let it? But can we put it towards their pension fund? Their underfunded pension fund.
You can, as long as they're not overspending somewhere else. If you want to take that surplus for that savings and put it towards the pension, that's at the discretion of the council, I would imagine.
Right. So what about the health care that they saved, the money that they didn't pay out and hiring this person, that $15,000? Is that money that we can also move over that wasn't used in that line item? Because we accounted for it, correct?
Yeah, I'd have to look at the individual line items and run a forecast model on it to see where they're coming out.
Okay, because I am very, very interested in that. And I'm very interested in it because it's a substantial amount of money that we could be putting over into their pension fund or into their rainy day fund. I mean, I'm not deciding for us, but I just think that that's something we need to look at, especially because now we're in May. They haven't started the process yet for next year. So they may not even get a new chief until September. So there's that money as well, you know, that we put in for the 2021 budget that they're not going to be using for a new chief. And that money I just think what's really important is that we need to start saving instead of waiting at the end, you know. Well, I guess we have to, but could you do that for me, Frank? Because I'm very interested in knowing. I think we need.
I'll run a forecast model and see what it looks like.
Okay, Councilman Cohen, I think I've maxed out my round. So you are up.
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. I just wanted to circle back on the training, that $10,000 in training for the munis, if I'm pronouncing that right, that we pay $178,000 for a year. And the reason why I want to bring it back is it's similar to my comments I made last week regarding the grants writer. I said, okay, return on investment, grants writer, if we have a full-time grants writer, and I believe, Frank, you might have said to me that they maybe write about $10 million of grants, and so, you know, you're going to get back to me in terms of what type of revenue we might expect versus not of having that position fully employed this year. So I kind of see that as a great return on investment. And then we talked about, generally speaking, last week, I'm going to use the wrong title, so I apologize, about the blight officers. And I said, I know that the police write out tickets for any infractions that the blight officers happen to spot. And the answer I got last week was that, well, they basically result in about $30,000 worth of infractions or revenue. So I said, okay, well, that second additional head, which can do a lot more, is only going to bring in $30,000 of additional revenue. So I'm still thinking about, do I even want to support that? So here we are coming back to training of $10,000 for 178,000 membership. And so I'm wondering, can you just give us briefly what this subscription entitles us to? And perhaps once we train these individuals, what type of revenue or revenue opportunities would we be able to untap that we're not tapping now? Because if there's a lot of revenue opportunities, then dang it, I'm all on board for training these guys so that we can get some more money in our coffers. So if you can give me a little comment. Sure. Yep.
Short answer, zero revenue impact. The training would have absolutely no impact on revenue. What it would be is, let's say that, so the annual fee would be similar to like now, if you go out and buy Microsoft Excel, there's an annual fee instead of just buying the software, right? And that includes upgrades. It includes all of the support that goes with it. But let's say that you went out and bought Excel and you spent $600 on it, and all you used it for was a calculator. That is the equivalent of what's happening now. So what we will try to do is, to the extent that I am able to help people and walk them through the process with minimal support from Munis in the training, we'll go that route. But the MARB has made it very clear to me that as part of, and I think it was in the MOA that we voted on, or you voted on the other night, is that the Bloom-Shapiro report would be addressed, and this goes to address that.
Yeah, I'm not saying that we shouldn't or shouldn't do it. I'm trying to get an understanding. And if there was a return on investment, I'd probably be a lot more proactive. But now I understand you have to educate your, well, anyway, enough said. That's my only question. Only one question this round. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? I do. Oh, go ahead, Chairman.
So my last two, Frank. So bank fees. And I lost the page that bank fees, oh, there are page 100. This year was 40,000, next year is proposed at 70,000. And didn't we just put an RFP out for banking? Shouldn't that, we thinking that number be going down as opposed to going up?
We did. However, if you look on page 100, for the 4 years of actual expenditures are running anywhere between 60 and in fiscal 18, $80,000. So I believe that the 40 was just a carryover from the old budgeting process where the same number was used all the time and never adjusted for reality. I can go back into the ledger and find out exactly what makes up those numbers. But with a historical spend of somewhere around $65,000, that's why I put the 70 in there.
And I didn't know what those numbers made up either. Are those paying late and we have fines attached to it, or that's just transaction fees? Have you are getting close to making an award on that bank RFP yet?
I don't know. I'd have to talk to Lee about that. He was leading that charge. But I will make a note to provide the detail as to what goes into those bank fees.
And lastly, do you have how much the city paid in overtime for police and public works for the fireworks last year?
No, we don't break it out to that level of detail. I think the only way we'd be able to do it is to go back through the payroll system, and I'd be able to see probably the day that those hours are charged. So I could look for any overtime related to that week and make an assumption around it.
It would be helpful if you could do that.
Okay.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Frank, where are we in regards to the park RFP?
I don't know. That wasn't my purview. I thought that was a council project. Wasn't that one of the line items you added to the contingency amounts last year?
Right. I was just wondering if we have a, I'll ask follow up with Lee.
Okay.
Um,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was the overtime on the fireworks?
Yes, the police and public works overtime for the fireworks.
Got it.
So, Frank, hold on. I have to look at my list, Frank. I have a list. I lost my list.
Okay, I guess that's it.
One would think, huh? Oh, so similar to what Councilman Cohen says at the start of our meetings and when different department heads come in before us, he talks about, you know, the state of things and the pandemic and everything. What would you do differently now? I mean, I've always appreciated your candor and your straightforward answers, but you did this budget, I don't know, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. What if you were to say, yep, yeah, I know the council has to make some cuts. What's your educated, in your experience, what do you think we should do? Because I mean, you can't honestly think that it can go through the way it is right now.
Why not?
I don't know. I'm just thinking there's other people saying no one's going to pay taxes. People are being deferred. People are losing their jobs. You know, the word is that we're cash strapped. That's kind of what I heard today. But then I asked you and you don't think so. So if there's a concern about getting money, well, it can't just be, our hopes are that the taxes are going to come in. We need to.
Okay, so we have no data points to make an educated assumption. COVID hit in the fourth quarter. All of the tax revenues, 98% of them had already been collected. So nothing to go off of to see what kind of impact that would have on an ongoing basis. Other towns, I can tell you, I received something that listed other towns, and a lot of them are not assuming any major impact to COVID. In the short term, it may very well be. But again, the budget is an annual amount, so it would be, if we have a shortfall in the first quarter because of the timing around people being able to pay, the assumption would be that by the end of the year, hopefully, most of them would. If I had my druthers and was able to put together what I would want, then yeah, maybe you could crank back the assumption around the collection rate. But if you do that, it increases the mill rate. So pick your poison, right? It's do we issue the taxes and see how much cannot be paid, or do we increase the taxes to those who are able to pay it in order to support those who can't? And I don't know if that answered your question or not. From the cost side, I don't know where you would find cuts at this point other than people. And that would require some really deep analysis.
The library award. I want to follow up on that for the library study. Do I ask you about that, or does that go to Lee too?
I think it was Lee and Colleen were running that one.
Lee and who?
And Colleen Bailey, the head librarian.
No, I know, but we haven't moved on it. But okay, I will follow up with Lee on that one as well.
I helped write the RFP for you guys because the library didn't know how to approach it. But other than that, I really haven't been involved with it.
Okay, so you haven't gotten anything to say that these are the people we have to pay to do the study?
No, I have not. I haven't seen any of that.
That's unfortunate. Councilwoman O'Connor?
I asked Colleen Bailey about that, and we had awarded it to someone, and she said she had passed the paperwork on. I assumed she passes it on to Frank. That's what she said. It went to the finance department. Could it be sitting on Lee's desk then?
We'll follow up. We got to follow up, Councilwoman.
Thank you.
No, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions for Frank? Councilwoman Hamilton?
Just a quick question, Frank, on page 50. Can you tell me what the line item eviction services are and why we don't need them anymore?
My understanding is that that line item has been moved to either the building department or somewhere else. Someone in Public Works suggested that I take that line item out and they would absorb it somewhere else. But I'll have to go back through my emails and see who instructed me to do that. Oh, no, it looks like it's just actually on the wrong, they moved it up a line. So they were doing it in eviction services. Now they've asked us to put it into other repairs and maintenance upgrade. It's the one line above it.
I see that. And what is it for? Like actual evictions? The city eviction? What is it used for?
I'd have to double check for you, but yes, I think it is for costs related to the evictions. So the marshals and moving and any costs that the city picks up. But I can do a vendor search for you on that.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you so much. Frank. We will move on to risk management. Is he still with us?
Chairman, I believe you need to unmute him from the panel.
Hello?
Hi.
Hello?
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 Can you hear us?
I can hear you, breaking up a little bit, but I can hear you.
Okay, fabulous. Is there anything?
If you don't mind, I'll just circle back to eviction services. It's been moved over to the Public Works budget. The city is required, whenever somebody is evicted and they don't take their possessions, the city is required to take them and store them for a given period of time. And that used to be handled by an outside vendor. Now it is handled internally by the city. Hello?
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to talk to the council about in regards to your budget? Or do you want to just get into the question and answer?
We could just get into the question and answer. The risk and purchasing budget is only 5 line items, only because the nature of those two positions isn't a given budget. Purchasing, we work with the given department to put together an RFP, and it's usually money that's either in that department, LoCIP money, or project money that came from the state. So there isn't really a particular budget per se. And it's sort of the same thing with risk. The risk job doesn't have a given budget. It's the liaison between the third-party administrator, Corp Counsel, the Workers' Comp Commission, and so on. But I'd be glad to answer any other questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Councilwoman Hosky. Ray, I just have one question, just curiosity. The office supplies, were we underfunded this past year? This past year we had 34,700. I'm just wondering why the increase. Did we not have enough money, to the best of your knowledge? Beyond that, yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, that'll probably run over this year. Last year, we kind of put off under office supplies, generally chairs, small things like adding machines and so on and so forth. And we kind of were able to get through last year. I think this year we're going to have to buy some of those smaller supplies. So I requested the budget be returned to what it was prior to last year.
Prior to last year, unless I have this wrong, it was like 33,698. So
It
you're
was.
talking 2018, 2018. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it was 40,000. So I just asked for it to be returned because I do believe, you know, like we'll buy small printers if need be. Mr. Esposito needed one for his office. The one he had was, you know, so those things we kind of put off for the year. But going forward, I can't see that we can continue to put it off, especially with chairs. They're very expensive and just things of that nature.
Well, thank you. That's all I had. Thank you very much.
Let me just move to one other place that I'm not sure you all are aware that this is under purchasing, but the central services budget. And let me just get to the page because you may have some questions there. And as you'll see, the line items for payroll in both was lowered because the job is being split into two, as it was at one time and should be in the future. Let me just get back to that budget. And there's a couple of things I'd like to highlight for the next person.
I believe that's page 56, Rob.
Yep. Is everyone on page 56?
Has joined the meeting.
Hello?
Hello, it's Mark Payne from Recreation.
Hi, Mark. We are still meeting with Frank and his team, so you can just hang on a few moments. That would be great. This is Councilwoman Hosky. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just give you the one area where I think we can make a change rather than go through the budget, which is under budget and should come in the most important line items right where I think they are. But I do think the postage budget, there's some money that can be taken out of the postage budget. And the reason why you're only seeing it spent right now it's only spent to 29%. And the reason being was at the end of the last fiscal year, as we tried to get a handle on the postage budget and we turned around and we allocated money in prior years to the tax office to handle their billing. We were a little unclear. Given year to year, there's a number of elections, absentee ballots, some cards have to be sent out. We wanted to add an extra mailing for the tax office for the delinquent notices and so on and so forth. So we kind of really didn't touch the postage budget. At the end of last year, the person who handles the postage, because of the way the postage is handled, you're able to add a dollar amount through purchase power to the machine. She added a large dollar amount, so it sort of skewed last year's budget and this year's budget as well. So that's why it looks like that's severely underspent. But I still do think right now in the budget, request was 62. We could probably do well with 52 at this point. That's the one change I think you can make in that budget to try to simplify this entire process for you.
Thank you so much for that. We appreciate it. Do we have any other questions? Councilman Conlon?
I've heard two people say that the item has been switched over to, I forget the name, Tom McCarthy's area. But I still see it here in the other repairs and maintenance in the comptroller's area. Why do I still see it?
No, other repairs and maintenance, I believe, would be in Public Works.
Okay, well, why is it here on page 50?
I don't think they had me move it, Rob. They just put it into a different line.
Oh, I think this was after the fact, correct? I think you had already, when we realized that it wasn't being used, I think they didn't realize that eviction services was done in-house and they were paying for it out of their operating budget.
Yep.
Then we had come to you after the budget was presented and the book was printed.
To move it, right.
Correct.
So it's not over in Public Works as well. It's just showing here.
That's correct.
Showing in. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it in any of the public works budgets.
All right.
I thought that's, I don't see it here in my book, Frank, but I thought that's where you were going to move it because we had to.
Yeah, I think,
you're
right. I think we talked about it after we went to press.
Correct.
All right, as long as we're not double
Because that was the
dipping here,
time
that's all I wanted to.
No, that was the time I was making the transition from risk and purchasing over to the public works side, and I realized that the eviction service budget wasn't being used on the finance side.
I'm all set, Bridget. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Bruno, are you good? Did you want to talk, ask questions? You're muted.
Yes, please, Bridget, thank you. I have a question on this risk management. So the risk manager now went to page 68, correct? And we added a position now, so it went from, we were able to do it with 79,680, and now that position is going to be, 36 now, if you add the second position to it, right? The risk manager can't do that job as they've done it in the past. We're adding a position.
The risk manager is actually being added to Mr. Tiernan's department. And bear with me while I find it. Corp Counsel, so that would be on page 31. But yes, to your question, as a result of the HR study that was done, it was determined that the city did need a full-time risk manager. And Rob, I think you could talk to the benefits of having somebody doing that full-time and what that person can bring to the table.
Sure. I think, yes, and whenever there's a position added, and I think the city's probably been guilty of this over the last 10 or 15 years, it was put together about 15 years ago. Yes, could one person manage the day-to-day affairs of it? Yes, they probably could, but it couldn't be done efficiently. So what's happening is it's probably costing you more money on the other end. The risk manager really should be involved in the accident investigations. It should be really more involved daily in the cases and working with the third-party administrator to question certain things when a decision comes down. For an example, if somebody gets and I don't know how familiar you are with workers' comp, and I don't want to get too deep into the weeds. If somebody were to get a rating, which essentially results in a dollar amount paid by the city, and maybe the TPA didn't say, hey, you know what, we want a second opinion or an IME. That's just kind of a small example where we say, hey, we want somebody else to look at this. This rating seems out of line, and that rating translates into a dollar amount. So the risk manager really does need to work, even with settlements with employees on injuries and so on and so forth. The risk manager really does need to be more involved actively. Once the cases go to a hearing, the risk manager really should be attending the hearings, even though they're attended by Mr. Gunning. The risk manager is kind of shepherding the claim between the Workers' Comp Commission, Corp Counsel, and the TPA. So I think there is a cost there for the risk manager not being fully committed and acting daily in that position. I think the same thing with purchasing. There's other things with purchasing we can do that just didn't allow that position to really conduct itself in the manner in which it should have. And that was made worse by the fact that a couple of years ago, in the last administration, they eliminated the purchasing secretary. So what had happened was, in purchasing, you ended up doing your own administrative functions. Now you're paying the cable bill, you're paying, WB Mason, you're trying to put the bids together. When the bids come back, you're trying to get the information out to the various vendors, the various departments. You're trying to make sure that the bid bond is there, that it goes over to Corp Counsel for the contract to be drawn, that it comes back to your office. So you really got stuck in the weeds. So I do think there is a cost savings there, even though it doesn't look like it right now when you're breaking it into two positions.
Yeah, thank you very much for the explanation. I do appreciate it. And I'm listening, but right now I'm trying to figure out where we're going to get the money to pay 2 positions. But thank you very much. I'm all set, Bridget. Thank you.
And the benefits, get the benefits. If that's it, we can move on to Dave Richards and IT. Thank you so much, Ray. We appreciate your coming on tonight and answering our questions.
Thank you, everyone. Good luck.
All right, Rob.
Robert Ciandella
has left the
We
meeting.
had an executive session where we went over a lot of our information. Everyone knows what IT does. I won't go into that. But there was a question that was asked during that meeting that I can answer for you now. That had to do with how often are we attacked? We've had over the last year 246 attacks on our system. 8 of those attacks could have taken down our entire system. 14% of the attacks come from email. So those were just a few of the questions that were asked before that I did not have the information for you at that time. So if you have any questions on that, I can go into further detail. But as for my budget, you'll see it has remained kind of flat. There is some change in personnel, however. On page 53, you'll see a whole bunch of swapping out. The account coordinator position is still staying at 0. That was an IT position that assisted me that she passed away 4 years ago. So that hasn't been filled in the last 4 years, leaving me pretty much on my own. That position was at 69,000, and you'll see it zeroed out. You'll also see the lead operator is being removed from this department. I'm not sure where that is going or what's happening to that exactly. Frank can give you the exact chain as to what's happening to that position. But we are adding in, instead of the account coordinator, a network technician. So what we're looking for is someone right out of school that we can mold and keep, preferably someone from maybe UNH, Gateway, one of those, the local schools. That's right at the right price point for someone like that. There was that, and then you'll see you were discussing Tower Technologies. I just wanted to quickly go over how that works real quick. Tower Technologies is a very modular program, and it's called Munis, but it's run by Tower Technologies. There are so many different modules in there that we may or may not be using. And that's what Frank was basically talking about, is that some of them aren't used to their fullest extent, mainly because of training. The training that we can do, if we have another IT person, we can increase the training because I can do a train the trainer. I can send this person out, they can get trained, and then they can teach the people how to use the different modules. That's another one of the things that we can do with that position. So we are looking at a savings if we can bring that person in. Other than that, let's see, on page 121, this addresses some of the concerns from the council as to what we're doing with our software. You'll see we've included in there all the end-of-life software that we currently have to be replaced. So that includes Exchange, which is the email system, VMware, which is what all of our virtual servers run on, and all of our servers, Windows Server 2019. That'll bring us up to the latest and greatest if it hasn't become 2020 by the time we place an order. So I know it was discussed in the planning and zoning finance meeting about the software that they have and the problems that it's causing. This whole capital plan does revolve around that software being replaced, because if we can't replace that software, we can't bring any of this software up to date, because that's running on 17-year-old software. So that one's a very important piece of software that everything hinges on that piece of software. And that's located someplace else in the budget. And that's pretty much all I have for you, if you have any questions.
Just to clarify, Madam Chair, the software replacement upgrade is showing in capital non-recurring on page 121.
Frank, can you just really quick, or Dave, I just want to get clarification. All of the software, what is the total? Because we're saying it's all in different pieces. What is the total? And when I ask this, I'm asking citywide, PD-wide. I know the Board of Ed is not included, but when you're talking about this software upgrade that we need, is that all inclusive? I don't think it is, because I think on the police department side, I see software too.
Yeah, I don't budget for the police department. I don't think.
I know you don't. I'm more or less talking to Frank, but I know you said software 2 different spots on the city side. I'm just wondering if it's anywhere else.
No, it looks like it's totaling for the 4 line items between the police and the items in IT is about $108,000 for the and the upgrade.
Okay, so $108,000 would do the police, what Dave needs, maintenance, all of that stuff. Or whatever, I mean, okay, great, thank you. Continue. That wasn't one of my questions, really.
So that's all that I have for you. So whatever questions you have for me.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Dave? Councilman Massaro?
The computers that we have present day, how old are they? You're on mute, Dave.
Sorry. Anywhere from 1 year old to 6 years old. Particular budget.
Buy them outright, or do we rent them?
We own them outright. It's much cheaper to purchase than it is to do the lease programs, especially with the way we replace computers. The capital, the 5-year plan that I have does have enough computers being replaced each year to get us back on track to having a 5-year replacement cycle. And that should take care of us where we don't have any of these problems where we're running Windows XP on something or Windows 98 on something. All those machines are gone, so I'm focusing on replacing Windows 7 machines now with Windows 10. And that is on page 121. That's part of the 73,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So Dave, you just said that that's part of the 73,000? 121?
That's the citywide Infotech. That is 73,000. If you look on page 121, you'll see.
No, wait, so what does the 29, what's the exchange for the 29,000 and the Windows server for 25?
That is all just software. Those are software costs. That's not equipment.
Councilman Bruno, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Sure, thank you. Dave, I got a couple questions for you. I know that you do countless hours and you do a good job, and you personally helped me out a couple times trying to get in all. But with that being said, you got a $500,000 budget, right? So what would it actually cost to this where we're on a lease program where you have a company that comes in that would keep these computers up to maintain them? and will keep us out of trouble? Because it seems to me like we're outdated. And I'm just wondering what is one of my two questions, but what is your take on that?
So for somebody our size to outsource the staffing, you're talking about $282,000 a year to outsource the staffing. Right now, we're talking about what is the wages? 150. So you're talking about an extra $130,000 to outsource the staffing. As for equipment, I'm fairly aggressive when it comes to negotiating pricing on our equipment. I can get it less than what our vendors have been getting it for us by going direct. So if there's a computer that Business Network Group can get for $800, I've been averaging between 6 and 7. And I do the same with all of our contracts. So all of our software contracts, I beat the vendors up until it's much lower than what their first offer is.
It just seems like we're like a little bit behind, and you're always chasing it to try to repair. But we're behind, and that's all I was wondering.
Another person will make a huge difference in this, because you have to look. Since 2016, I've been by myself, so it's tough to keep up by myself. But once the other person is in there, I'll be able to focus more on the higher end things that we're paying a consultant to come in and help with.
Okay, so that's my other question. So go ahead, Frank.
Sorry, I was just going to say that yes, a lot of the position that we're in to constantly try to upgrade, and as you said, chasing our tail, is the result of so many years of delaying the infrastructure investment. So short-term savings, long-term problems.
Dave, can you mute yourself so that there's not like a, thank you.
So again, you know, we avoided the cost in the past, and now we're to the point, the same as we are with the vehicles, is you know, vehicles are out there literally having street signs in them because they're rotted through. And Dave is trying to replace software that should have been replaced 5 years ago, but nobody ever funded it.
Okay, thank you. Dave, my second question is, if this position will grant it that you're requesting, what are going to be the responsibilities of this position? So, I mean, who's managing it? What's going to happen with this, if you would?
All right, so I would be the manager of whoever comes in. That person will be trained on how to temporarily replace me for when I go on vacation, when I'm not available. But they'll be doing a lot of the desktop support that takes up most of my time at this point. That doesn't let me focus on the servers and whatnot. So a lot of break fix, and then training people on how to use the different pieces of software. When we move over to the new version of Office, we're going to need a considerable amount of training just to teach people how to use the current edition, because we're on either 2007 or 2013 versions of Office in the city right now. So there's going to be people that are going to really need to learn how to use the new software, and that's going to be something that person will help in doing alongside of me.
Okay, thank you. That blows my mind that we're on 2007. And that's why I was asking about outsourcing. It's just unbelievable that we're that far behind. With that, thank you. I appreciate it.
And I just wanted to point out that server that I was talking about earlier is 2003.
Unbelievable to me.
On it that we need to replace.
Like unreal. Thank you for your time, Dave. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we have any other questions for Dave? Councilman Cohen?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dave, just a quick question, going back to page 121 on the software, the 29,000 and the 15,000. Is the license that we're going to get for this software unlimited users, or is this just going to, I know it's a non-recurring cost, but obviously you won't have this cost next year, but about how many users are licensed, if you will, to be able to take advantage of the software? And the reason why I ask is, not so much the VMware, but the Exchange 2019. Doesn't the Board of Education have a similar platform? And if they have a license, would there be an opportunity to combine licenses, or are these separate licenses? Because I'm thinking, Exchange is Exchange, and if we have two departments paying for software, or maybe we don't, can you clarify that for me? Because this stuff's expensive, and if there's a synergy there of shared costs, I'd like to know. Thank you.
Sure. So the question, I'll go first, is the Exchange server is looking at 250 licenses. VMware is completely, it's how many you put on. You can put unlimited servers on. Same with the Windows Server 2019. That's a data center edition that'll allow us to put as many as we want. If I need to spool up a server, I can spool up a server in about 15 minutes without having to worry about licensing. So as for software purchases, we can't piggyback on anything that the Board of Education does because they get specialized education pricing. Colleges, high schools, elementary schools, they all get these really spectacular pricing that we can't even touch. They're paying dollars per person, where we're paying $20 to $30 per person. So that's the big difference. If there was any way I could find a way of taking advantage of the library costs or the education costs, I would certainly do it, but there isn't a way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I figured I'd ask. You never know. And my second question is just curiosity. For the most part, when I looked at, and I think you've explained it already, I looked at page 53. You're basically, I'm going to say, you're eliminating a lead operator and you're swapping it out for a network technician. So there's a net gain of maybe $9,000 or whatever. That you're not. You're able to basically have the same number of heads, if you will, but you're just basically making a new responsibility. Am I correct?
That's correct. The other position was a, I don't know how to describe it. It was a payroll type of a position. Frank could actually tell you better what the position is.
Yeah, 90% of the time, that individual is doing payroll-related activities. So with the outsourcing to ADP, it would no longer be a needed function in that department.
Well, then this is my question 2B, because they kind of go together, if I may, is thanks for that clarification. It's good to know that we're doing what we're doing there. But on page 54, overtime wages, I'm sorry, I read that wrong. I take that back. I read the wrong column. I have no question. I have no further questions. Thank you. Ooh, sorry about that. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Frank. Thank you, Dave.
Chairman Quagliani?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I don't know if this question is for Dave or for Frank. So is there a consultant line somewhere that I don't see for bringing in outside consultants to assist for IT related services?
That was line 52460. It had an amount of 66,000 in it, and that was removed. And that was how much the consultant was going to be for 1 day a week to come in. And since the position was put in, we since removed that out of the budget planning process.
So where did we pay when we had our attack? Where the system got locked down and we brought in consultants for many days. Where did that come from? And how much did it cost?
I believe it came from the contingency, and it was so many different pieces. There was I believe there was a $60,000 piece there, and I think there was an $80,000 piece. So I can tell you exactly how much because it did all funnel through finance.
Could you tell me who was brought in to do that?
Business Network Group was brought in, and they had recently, at that time, acquired a security company that specialized in just those type of attacks, and that they brought in them as an additional consultant.
All right, and then Dave, my second question, do you still administer the telephone account, telephone line item?
Yeah, that's something that's going to be worked on this upcoming year. That telephone account is still a mess.
That's Sabo. Has
There's
joined the meeting.
so many different locations that we have. There's telephone numbers in there for elevators that we don't know whether they go to elevators or not. There's a company that I plan on bringing in this upcoming year to go through all that.
But I'm talking about the budget line. Do you draw from that, or does somebody else draw from that?
A number of people draw for that. So individual buildings will send their bills over to accounts payable. Accounts payable pays some of their bills in there, and I have a few in there as well.
Is this just phone line fees, or is this for equipment as well? $336,000, page 36.
Yeah, that is also our network that goes from building to building. That's the fiber optic network.
Yeah. All right.
The phones. So there is equipment in there. There is the monthly services for all the rest. That also includes any cable TV. It includes our internet services at the various locations. There's quite a few things that are lumped into that. That's why it needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah, Frank, I think it'd be helpful. Maybe either next year there's more detail in this page, or we have a separate detail that kind of breaks out what that is.
I agree. It's we will attempt to do with the telephone line the same that we did with the debt service to get more information and granularity for you.
Okay, thank you, Chairwoman. I'm all set.
I have one question before we allow you to leave, Dave. The maintenance service agreement, who do we have that with?
Is that line 52510?
Yes.
Okay, that's actually a number of different contracts. If you like, I can list them. There's about a handful of them. So we have Andrews Technology, Tyler Technology. That is the largest part of it. That's the 178. The MyRec, which is Parks and Rec. Barracuda, that is our spam and archiving section. Civic Plus is our website. Quality Data is what the tax assessor uses. Vision is the assessor. There's the backup software for our servers. There's the Everbridge program. There's Carbon Black, which is the software that has been protecting us for the last couple of years now. And then New England Geosystems, which is a small amount in there as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think that wraps it. Appreciate you joining us this evening.
And I'll still be on until the call, but I'll be stepping away.
Yes, thank you so much. Mark Payne, we are sorry we ran over, and you are now up. The entire city council is here. Generally what we do, what we ask department heads to do is, present whatever you want to present, talk to us, whatever you want to talk to us about. Once you are done, we will do a roundtable of questions. Each council person will ask two. And once we go around, they may have a second chance to come and ask additional questions. When they are talking, we just ask that you mute. And when you're talking, we will mute just to prevent any type of back feed. And if you do reference anything in the budget, if you can just tell us what page you're going to, which will just help some of the council members get there and be able to look at it with you. So with that said, you are invited to tell us whatever you would like us to know.
I looked at the mayor's proposed budget versus the proposal that I put together. The majority of the increases were for personnel, primarily to address the minimum wage, but also to address some situations where we've had to either move or postpone or cancel programs due to staffing at facilities. Because we don't have a facility of our own, we rely heavily on, like, the Board of Ed buildings. We were using the Noble Community Center. So, you know, the Board of Ed's always been a great partner. The high school's always been a tremendous facility for us to use, but with all the work, we've had to move to some other schools. So, like, Savin Rock, for instance, was able to accommodate us for the volleyball, but we had an overtime custodial situation there. The same thing with personnel at Noble being cut. So we tried to include some money to cover, say, attendance at Noble, or for, like, Board of Ed custodial overtime when we need to use one of their buildings in a sort of a less than traditional manner. So we didn't get everything that we had requested, but you know, I understand what the council and the mayor are going through in terms of these austere budgets, and most of what we had requested appears to have been at least minimally addressed. You know, so at the end of the day, we'll do what we've done every year, and that's what we can do. You know, we had a minimum wage increase to $11 last year, which really wasn't addressed in the budget. And this is the second year of 5-year dollar increases. So we go to $12 an hour this summer, 13 next year, 14 the year after. So we're going to have to, you know, gradually increase the funding in these line items. Two things that's happened is, like, last summer, for instance, a couple of the playgrounds, we had to stop registration at a set number, even though we could potentially accommodate a few more kids in a larger schoolyard facility. We really just didn't have the staffing. The second thing that we're finding is that, you know, we hire the kids at 15, 16 at minimum wage. And as a recreation department, we get a lot of kids who plan on going to college for education, recreation, or some kind of social service education. And these jobs are tremendous for them in terms of experience, but also relevant resume experience. And we previously used to, when the minimum wage was around $6, they got a 25-cent a year raise. And basically what's happened is the spread between the minimum wage that we're hiring the young kids in and the college kids has sort of evaporated. And so it's becoming more difficult for us to keep the kids coming back for the 5th or 6th year while they're in college. We're paying some college kids going into their junior or senior year, you know, very minimally more than a 15 or a 16-year-old. You know, and you do get a lot more value out of the older kids. They're a lot more invested and experienced. So just at the end of the day, we really need to address the salary issues. The budget request that I had put in was $965,000, and I just, for perspective, want to let you know that of that, $867,000 was salaries. So 89% of the recreation department's operating budget, as proposed, was salaries. It's $323 for the full time, and it was $544,000 when you add up all of our instructors, our part-time employees, our seasonal employees, the custodial things that we cover. And these employees are, you know, the lion's share of our employees live in town. They're not all kids, but, you know, a lot of the money goes back into the community. I think having a strong recreation department is great for the community. And as a community of home and families, I think that our open spaces, park areas, and dynamic recreation programming is some of the most important stuff we have going for us. So the operating budget was, some of the salary issues were minimally addressed. So my expectation is to keep coming back and looking for a little more moving forward. We're going to have to in terms of the minimum wage. And then there were the four 5-year capital projects, which I see as being really the primary needs of the city and the recreation department. A sand management plan, some money to really address our playground structures and playground equipment in our open spaces, the basketball court at the Nike site, and a sand management plan for a utility building for Park Rec. We, aside from our office building, we do not have an indoor facility. We run the summer camp program and the playgrounds and all sorts of after school and evening programming for youth and adults, and we simply don't have a field house building. And at a certain point in time, we'd be very, very well served to have that type of space, both for safety and for quality of life in terms of programming. At this point, I could turn it over to any specific questions on any of the line items. I have my proposed budget, and I have the mayor's proposed opened up on a laptop, so. Bridget?
Oh, thank you. Oh, sorry, I couldn't get my thing to unmute. Councilwoman Johnston?
Hi, I just have 2 clarifying questions. Beach constables, can you just describe what their role is and if they're year-round? That was my first question. And the other one is whether or not you anticipate an increased need in your budget for medical supplies post-pandemic world.
Yeah, in terms of like PPEs, we do buy a lot of equipment. Though, we have the lifeguards both at the beaches and in the pools, and extensive playground and camp programs. So we go through a lot of first aid supplies, and we do have, the basic PPE, including facial protection and surgical masks and such for the lifeguard staff. It's a tough question for me because at the point in time that, we have staff that are going to require PPE as a part of functioning, you really have to weigh the safety of the activity versus the benefit of the activity. So in terms of the medical supplies, we have had enough in the past, and I think moving forward, if there was an indicated need, we could cover it for the year and request it. Your second question on the beach constables was, the beach constables are summer seasonal employees. They had traditionally checked beach parking stickers in the lots, and so we've still had some in the lots, but we haven't had to man all the lots because some of them have kiosks now. So the constables really are something that we've traditionally had. Their role has been somewhat minimized with the use of the pay kiosks. And in terms of moving forward, should the city, look to extend that kiosk program or look to, enforce the beach parking in a different fashion, that's something that we could look at. Bridget?
Thank you.
Chairman?
Hey, Mark, how you doing? Ron Quagliani.
Hi, Ron.
The question I have is, so I'm a bit nervous with, I know what you guys usually do in the summertime. And, I'm not quite sure how whatever, obviously what we're going through now and what the governor's guidance may be throughout the summer, how that's going to impact your revenue stream. I know that that's when you're really, in the height of summer camps and things along that nature. Do you have any intel as to where that may be going, or are you having scenarios in place in case you could hold some things, but may have to hold them differently?
Yeah, we've been doing a lot of planning without really having a lot of answers. And the initial guidelines that are coming down from the state are making it look as if it's, they're fairly prohibited to running any kind of normative programming for the summer. So at this point, we're not sure, but I can't see where we're not going to take a revenue hit because, quite frankly, I don't think you can run a day camp from 9 to 4 with 175 kids in the park. The nature of the summer programming is basically interactive games and a lot of aquatics. Both involve bringing kids together in tight spaces and, collectively engaging with one another. And right now, I'm not sure that even the state knows what we can and can't do. And they don't want to go too far with it, so they've lumped everything together from daycare to camp programs. And I mean, the nature of camp programs is apples to orange in terms of comparisons. They're lumped overnight camps from private facilities in with nonprofit situations, and things like municipal day camps, along with daycare, which could be 6 kids in a home under the small state license. So I'm not exactly sure where this is going to go, but we'll be ready to do something for the public. But at this point, I feel as if the revenue line item will take a hit. That said, if the revenue line item takes a hit, there's also going to be budgeted money that's not going to get spent. We still have money in a lot of our line items that we use this time of year. We'd be going through interviewing and hiring and training and purchasing, and and the camp program begins before the fiscal year ends. So we're definitely going to show a balance in many of our line items, which isn't really indicative of what we've been doing, because we've basically been shut down for the last number of weeks in terms of paid programming.
Yeah, and my only comment is listen, I'd rather see you expend all those line items. That means that we're holding programs, and I think it's going to be critically important this summer that we try to hold something, whatever that guidance allows us to do, to get, kids engaged. Again, I mean, what they've been going through the last, month or so, I think if there's any opportunity, we need to try and do that. And we'll know that maybe in the next couple of weeks, but I'm definitely supportive of whatever programs you could put together to help engage the youth of our community. That's all I have. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thanks, Ron. If I can add to that, we've been having discussions. I talked to Dave Richards. I've been talking to the programmers about doing interactive stuff online. What could we do with the city's YouTube channel? And we're looking at going online with things like Tai Chi and aerobics and adult exercise programs. One of our youth activities, one of our more popular programs is the after-school karate. It usually sells out in all the schools we can offer it at. And we had discussions today with our karate instructor where, we're going to look to, if we're going to have an extended downtime where we can't engage with the kids firsthand, person to person, we have to do something for them where we're going to remain connected with them and give them the ability to be physically active and engage in their their usual activities in some sort of fashion, just to try to have some sort of normalcy for them.
No, I agree. Thank you.
Councilwoman McGee?
I have 2 questions. The first question is, how does one, this would obviously be before or after the quarantine, but how does one go about acquiring a permit for the green, and what does that process look like?
So for an application for the green is as simple as coming in and getting an application and filling it out, but it basically it can be minimally involving or it can be very, very involved depending on the size and the nature of the activity. We have to look at what the applicant is proposing and try to peel away the layers and sort of envision the event as it's going to be to determine not just their anticipated size of the crowd, but what the actual size of the crowd is, and then what types of needs they would have, because any costs that the city would have to bear as a part of the activity, the city recoups through a fee for the permit. So it could be as simple as someone comes in with a small activity, and I can look at it and sign off on it, and to something that's much, much larger, that we're going to have to contact Public Works and talk to them about staffing and determine costs, and and at times I bring the permits to the Recreation Commission, for their guidance and input as well before we make a final decision.
Okay, thank you.
We really want the public to utilize the green and assemble as a community. It's just, the city is really, at risk if we don't try to peel away as many layers as we can. And once an activity occurs from year to year, it makes it a lot easier to approve a permit, because you're familiar with the individuals and you have a sort of a firsthand knowledge of what it is they're trying to do. So we just, it's a two-sided coin. We really want the public to utilize the facility and engage, but at the same time, we have to really, make sure that we protect the city from both liability and sort of unwanted attention.
My second question is, with the time that we're sort of spending inside, technology to me is one of the most fascinating things about the Generation Z. They're very into their phones. I think this is actually the best way to grab their attention, is by social media. I wanted to know, what were some of the plans being put in place for kids who maybe are not athletic and or take karate classes, to continuously be engaged. If there were people that you were talking to, younger people you were talking to, or people that you all were connecting with, to figure out how you can still keep young people engaged, which I think is not too great of a challenge, because a lot of them love their phones. But what are some of the things that I just am interested to know?
Yeah, rather than we looked at things like arts and crafts and streaming, and what we thought was that as the weather warms up, ideally these kids have been cooped up in the house, and what we're really focused on, if we are minimized in terms of our programming, is to sort of look to create and communicate safe scenarios where people could go out individually or as twos or as families and, actively engage in our open spaces. So we've looked at the more active stuff, and karate isn't something where you have to be athletic. It's actually, karate is first of all, it's a self-defense thing. And second of all, it's, physical activity that everyone needs. And it's a great way to develop balance and coordination and strength. And so we really, and in terms of doing, we could try to do anything streaming. I just see where something physically active in a 45-minute to 1 hour segment is going to attract a lot more attention than something that is a little more passive, like in arts and crafts. So, and like you said, with the kids with the phones, and there's more opportunity for them, I think, to entertain themselves with the media. And so we're looking to see where we can get the public outdoors and engaged in open spaces, physically active, enjoying the fresh air, and at the same time, keeping safe and maintaining, whatever kind of distance we need from one another. I'd really like to look into like either purchasing or renting an inflatable screen to do a series of drive-in movies. If push comes to shove and we can't do much, that's a real safe thing that we could do with families. It's, again, it's not as active, but it is more along the lines of arts and entertainment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Cohen?
Hi, Mark. It's Barry. How you doing?
Hi, Barry.
Good. I want to, first of all, before this goes too far with my questions, I want to thank you in front of the whole council for all your help thus far and continuing with the Hubbard Park work that we've been doing. Really appreciate it, and your staff's work.
Thank you.
More than welcome. I just want to leverage off of something that Chairman Quagliani said, that and that also Councilwoman McGee noted, is in the summertime, whatever we can do to have some activities, especially being cooped up in the house for who knows how many weeks now, is great. I also noted that you probably have not spent, as the chairman noted, all of your funds. So hopefully you'll have a healthy budget to do something, which is wonderful. But with that said, I was looking at next year's budget, and maybe it's just not clear to me. And if you could just shed some light, on page 92, other contractual services. This year, which is a new line, if you will, a relatively new line, I should say, we're asking for $15,000 more. And the reason why I bring it up, as I say pretty much at all these sessions, is there's a lot of nice to haves and needs to haves, and I'm really focusing on the needs to haves. And, you know, I definitely want to see an active and robust parks and recreation area. At the same time, I'd like to see you use up, wonderful to leverage what the chairman said, to use up your funds so that we could, you know, be able to build from there. But can you give me an idea why we need $15,000 more? Like what activities or what are you doing with that 15,000, I guess?
So that was the money towards when I said, when we had put in an increase to try to cover having an attendant or staff at the Noble Community Center so we could continue to use the programming rooms there at night, and also to cover the custodial expenses when we have to bump to a school and a usual activity becomes an unusual activity. There's certain things that we could do at the high school because of the staffing there that the Board of Education just accommodates us. And when we move those types of activities into one of the grammar schools with a larger gym facility like Savin Rock, they don't have nearly the same staffing, and so it at times requires an additional custodian to come in. So basically that money, and I put it under contractual services because that just basically it would be sort of contractual in terms of what the custodian's contract was or what our maintenance department's contract was. So basically it would go for building coverage so that we could run a program or an activity that might otherwise be canceled or moved.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that clarification. The reason why I ask it is, you know what, I understand logistics can be a challenge and so forth, but if you didn't have that $15,000, you would still be able to do the programs as you're doing now, or is it just, it would be impossible to do the programs that you would have? I know this year's an outlier given the pandemic, but you know, is it going to prevent you from doing the programs, or is it more of a way to do the programs better?
No, it was a matter of the adult volleyball we were able to cover, and the aerobics was a smaller program and we wouldn't be able to cover it. So we wound up having to postpone a session of aerobics, for example. So
okay, so basically it's allowing you to ensure the integrity of your program, if you will, if indeed, you know, we were to run these sessions, if you were to bring back or be able to expand these sessions that you were not able to for various reasons this past year. Yeah, I have a lot of trouble. Yeah, go ahead, please.
the second thing with money, like where it applies to Noble, we've had some preliminary discussions with like Bob Morton in the Youth Services Bureau, and I don't know that if he had included some money in his budget, but there's a couple of departments that could actually use some of the spaces in Noble in the evening, and it's a community building, so we'd like to have the building open in the evening at least till 8 p.m. or so, as opposed to closing it earlier. So, you know, I would certainly talk to Bob and the other agencies that could utilize the space to try to get some leverage on the money, or sort of develop our own small economy of scale in terms of, if we're going to bring someone in, you know, can we have two departments having activities, or rather than coming in one at a time, perhaps we could piggyback, you know, and minimize some of the expense that way. But having the money in the line item would go a long way towards us not having to postpone or cancel, especially some of the smaller adult programs.
Well, you answered my second question because that was it about the synergies about what, okay, well, you, with that said, you know, we're going to make some tough decisions. We have to make some tough decisions in terms of, you know, you guys do a lot of good stuff there, and at the same time, you've been hindered because of a number of reasons, and we're going to see where it goes. But thank you so much, Mark. I appreciate your clarification, your work, and your time. Thank you. And Madam Chair, I'll give it back to you. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions for Mark? Sorrow?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mark, non-resident people for the city of West Haven, what are we charging for beach stickers?
Chief, the beach stickers are coming out of the tax office now, so I'm not sure. We used to handle the stickers for both the non-resident vehicles and the boat ramp passes, but they're in the tax office now. It's probably a better place for them because we know that, you know, they're not going out now when people owe back taxes on the vehicles. But that's something that we could review, and ultimately I think it does fall under the purview of the Recreation Commission to either set or suggest the fees.
Yeah, because I see over here you get an expense for beach stickers, $4,000. What is that? Could you explain that to me?
As far as I know, and I've just gotten back to Public Works from DPW for a while, but it seems that the money was left in the recreation budget because that's where it came out of. And when the city has actually purchased stickers, that's where they've gone to. And I'm sure it's not enough money. They've had to find money from other line items. So, you know, we haven't purchased stickers every other year due to cost and expense. But at the same time, you're right. The $4,000 does remain in the in the department's line item.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councilwoman Hamilton?
Hi, Mark. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, thank you. So I'm wondering, we have so many like neighborhood parks that are in horrible, horrible shape. What's your path in getting them up to par? Maybe not at one time, but like one a year at least. They're dangerous. They're an eyesore. What can we do to kind of bump them up? I know that you had some conversation with Councilwoman Hosky on maybe, telling us what you might need to bring some of these parks back up to life. I was just wondering where you are in that process.
So I had submitted a 5-year capital proposal for playgrounds. I'm just looking through to try to get it. And what I had suggested was for this fiscal year, $100,000 to start, and then each year moving forward, at least for a few years, to do $50,000. I think by the second year, after I would be able to finish auditing all the parks, we'd have a good idea moving forward in terms of whether we could minimize the expense, suspend the expense for a while, or, preferably come up with some sort of continuous maintenance plan where we watch the age of the equipment and replace equipment as necessary. I'm looking to purchase equipment that we could maintain better in-house. A lot of the newer stuff just has specialty hardware, specialty fittings, plastic slides, and stuff that looks really, really nice, but isn't that durable and is not equipment that's real easy for our staff to work on. So I'd really like to get back to stuff like, swing sets where we could have strap swings and infant swings, and some of the spring toys for the kids, and the merry-go-round type structures that, are made of metal, have very few moving parts, and and the wear parts are very easy to swap out. So I know, like right now I'm looking at, Painter Park, the equipment needs to be replaced. There's a structure down the beach at Parcel I by the restroom facilities that needs to be replaced. We have Contact Drive Park, which we put a rider on the deed when we swapped the rider from Bayview Park down at Water Street for the Haven project. We swapped we were able to get the rider on the deed changed to the Contact Drive Park. So the city has an agreement on that where we have to put in a structure and probably a couple of tables and a bench or so. I know Brent Watt Park is a newer park, and I've been up there, and I know there's very little. I know there's no playground equipment. I'd love to speak with the neighborhood and see if they felt that a small structure or benches were more appropriate. I'd like to rediscover the Gilbert Street playground, which we really haven't done much with in a long, long time. I'd really like to address the drainage problem at Swampscott. It's a great little pocket park in a beautiful neighborhood. The problem is it's only dry to use for about 6 or 8 weeks out of the summer, and the rest of the year it's very, very wet. So I know with $100,000, and if we could pitch it as a LoCIP project, if the city wanted to appropriate LoCIP money towards this, we could use the state's capital improvement money. It wouldn't have to be something that would be budgeted out of the operating budget. And if it goes through in this year's 5-year plan, we could apply for the money and get it approved for August and start moving forward. But I agree with you that, again, I said before that we're a community of homes and families, and we have so many beautiful park areas, small pocket parks, open space areas. And what we really, really need to do, I think, is maximize them as a resource for the community. And really, I think it would sell the brand of the city of West Haven better than anything else that we could do.
It would really bring up the neighborhoods, I think, especially for the little pocket parks, for the younger children that are in the neighborhood. It would really make a difference for just outside life. We have none in these. There's a park that is, just really terrible on Ocala Street, if I'm saying the name right. I think me and Trinae, we border that district. These are the little parks that make differences in neighborhoods. These are the reasons why people would want to live in a neighborhood, especially when they're raising younger children. So it would really, really be good if there's a plan set in motion, so we don't have to do them all at one time, but we can just, do one at a time. These parks, you can't even use the equipment that are there. They're outdated and they're probably very dangerous at this point. But, it just would make a difference, especially when families cannot afford maybe to take their children to far away amusement parks. If they could just take them outside, it would make a big difference. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, and I would add that I agree with you 100% on the value to the neighborhood and the community. These are really, they can be hubs of the neighborhood where not only can the kids play safely and the adults know where the kids are, but they're also places for the adults to meet and talk, and for the neighborhood to sort of assemble. And it sounds like a time gone by, but it's really not. And they, the small neighborhood parks are they can be very stabilizing forces for a neighborhood.
May I ask another question, please? How about grants? Have we looked into any grants that may help us?
In terms of looking for grants for playground structures, there's really not too much available. In the grants writer, we have basically one person in the grants department right now. So you really have to look at the economy of scale as to what they're doing too. And I'd be hard pressed to ask them to go and chase a bunch of small grants, because frequently the amount of time and energy they have to put into it that would, take them away from doing something, much more substantial, I'm hesitant to ask the grant writer. And basically, the LoCIP, local capital improvement money, is essentially a state grant. So, and that's the type of grant I love. The state says, we know you have needs. You pitch the project to us and demonstrate your need, and we will let you apply the money, as you see fit in a best fit, scenario. So that's kind of what this is.
Thank you.
Would be the utilization of LoCIP funds for, LoCIP grant money for the playgrounds.
Thank you, Mark.
Hi, Mark. It's Councilwoman Hosky. I have a couple of questions and just one comment. I do just want to give kudos to you and your staff for those Easter delights that you were able to deliver to the children of the city. I got a lot of kudos. It was just really fabulous, and it was really great that the mayor was able to match that. And I think, I don't know, hundreds of kids or more were able to sign up. So that is just really great social distancing and bringing, some fun activity to the kids. I do have a couple of questions. The park that is near Glade Street that I know couple of minutes, I'm not really sure when, I don't want to say anything, but I know that a past administration sold part of that park to the VA hospital parking. And it was my understanding that there was an agreement that if we sell that the city, that particular administration, would go in and upgrade that park. And it's my understanding that that park did not get any of the agreed upon upgrades. They took away half the size of it, even though that park serves a very large population. Families, there's a lot of families over, in Glade Street in those apartments. Can you tell us anything about that? Did we just walk away from this idea that, we were going to do what was supposed to be done? Has there been any conversations regarding that?
I haven't heard anything. And I remember going to this Beth in Public Works when Beth was the commissioner. And when Beth went into the personnel position, I worked under 4 or 5 separate commissioners past that. So I don't know if really the project kind of just got the dust had settled on it and it needs to be brushed off and shown the light of day, or I seem to recall something about we were waiting to do something with the playground until the structure was built. They were going to put a parking garage on it, or so, and that plan seems to have gone away. So we'll have to revisit it, but we're in the same situation with Contact Drive Park as well, where we made an agreement because there was a deed restriction on Bayview Park. And
right.
Basically, we put the restriction on Contact Drive, and as a part of the agreement, need to upgrade and put in some amenities. So, I'll have to start digging, and we'll look at both of those. I agree. That's it was such a high use spot. Aside from all the kids in the neighborhood, before we had added some of the soccer fields, they actually had soccer practice up there. There's a court. There's a small playground. So moving forward, we'll just keep it on the list of playgrounds. I could talk to John Counter and see. I'm not exactly sure. I think part of the playground facilities on their property, part is on our property. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. We should just come together though and figure out what we're obligated to do, and more importantly, just what should we do for the community there.
Right. I mean, and I would appreciate that, because I know it is something that I just learned about recently, and I've been on this council for 2.5 years. So it wasn't done in my time, it was before that. So you're saying that we took away half of, you know, these kids' space, their play space, and then we actually had the audacity not to follow up and do what we committed to however many years ago. And I know this wasn't under you, but I would definitely, you know, appreciate that, because that is just a high traffic area with a lot of kids. You see a lot of kids over there. And I think it would, I think, you know, they're way overdue. Like I understand what we did down and when we sold that to the Havens, but you know, this is long overdue, and it should not continue to be forgotten. So I appreciate that. I do have a question.
Just if I can add to that, again, it was, I mean, that project goes back like two, three prior administrations and probably 4 public works commissioners. And, you know, it was, there's still a huge parking issue up and down West Spring Street, Stevens Street, all the way to Abner Street and the highway. And so, I mean, there was a huge issue for the entire neighborhood there in terms of the VA and all that spillover parking. And it was something that really needed to be looked at. And I just remember being in the public works office and Beth just working so hard on making it work in terms of, you know, just to basically make the parking, alleviate the parking issue. And then once the VA and the government sort of got their act together and there was a plan, then we were going to move forward with the park. But, you know, it was such a long and arduous process just to be able to do that for the VA. And the irony is that it's a government agency. We had to go to the same federal government to get permission to do this for one of their federal agencies. And it really was a big debacle. So, but again, moving forward, you know, we keep an eye on it. We'll you know, determine what the area of the property is, talk to the housing authority to see what their needs are. And I know they have some special needs kids up there too, and they don't have any adaptive equipment, or you know, potentially we could put in you know, either a handicap swing or something, you know, something that meets the needs of the community there.
That would be great. I appreciate that. Thank you so much. And of course, it's never to place blame. My objective is to always remain curious and to try to figure out how to get things done when we've promised, and that's all. I do have another question. It is my,
I'm sorry?
it's my understanding, and tell me that if I'm wrong, but I was told that last year or the year before that there was money to do work in the parks, but that we didn't move on the money and that we had to turn it back over to the state. That there was money, say, to resurface Nike site last year, but because it wasn't utilized and bids didn't go out, we had to return that money. And I don't know, I am asking, and again, it is being curious, if that is the case, but if it's not and someone gave me wrong information, I am more than willing to hear that as well. That we, go ahead.
So I've heard this, and I really haven't personally been able to figure out the nature of the grant. Again, I was in Public Works at the time, and when I moved back to Park and Rec, the grant was pretty much finished and was being written up. So I'm not exactly sure what the money was or was not earmarked for, or was not used for. But if it could have been money for something recreational in nature, and someone thought it was going to be, it was intended for one thing and it was used for something else, I haven't seen a copy of that grant report. And I wasn't involved in it. I know there was a number of people involved in putting the grant together, and then the grant writer left, and the position was open for a while, and now we basically had a new grant writer come in on top of me being a new director. So yeah, I really can't speak to that. I know I can tell you that I have a quote on my desk from Hindig, which is a West Haven company located on Spring Street, to resurface the basketball court for a little over $41,000 for both courts. We also have quotes on LED lighting for up there. So when we get the opportunity to do that, we're ready to move, and I would say that's probably priority one. That is such a highly utilized court. It's lit, so, you know, it can be played until 10, 11 o'clock at night. You know, the central location and just the, you know, the facility just really isn't safe to use anymore. There was a drainage issue which caused the condition, which Public Works just alleviated. They were doing some work up there, and they were able to get a drain cleared out that was causing ponding of water near the court. And I think most of the cracking and opening up of the court was simply due to frost heave from the water sitting under it. And you know, I'm confident that the court being properly resurfaced is not going to suffer the same condition because the drainage is corrected now. So.
Frank, did you have something you wanted to say in regards to my question? One moment, Frank. Mark, please. Frank, go ahead.
I believe that you were speaking of the DOJ grant, the youth violence program. My understanding, and Mike DeMassa has more detail than I do, but my understanding was the grant was in fact received. Nobody did anything with it. And upon notification that the grant was coming to an end and all the spending needed to be done and the reports need to be filed, people finally started getting a move on. Long story short, not all the money was spent, and we did in fact have to refund the state. I want to say $10,000, $8,000, but I could be wrong on the amount. Mike DeMassa would have more information than I do.
I just, you know, in regards to that, Frank and Mark, you know, I'm not looking to point fingers. I'm just looking to say that we have opportunities and we need to have a system to track this, you know. $8,000 or $10,000, $20,000, it is still money that we should have utilized, that, you know, we shouldn't be returning any gifts. And I don't know what the checks and balances are. I don't know, you know, I know what I would do to make sure I'm not returning any money, but, you know, we have to do better. I mean, I could see if we didn't need the money, but I can walk down to 3rd Avenue Park and tell you we need the money. So that is just something that I hope that, you know, we continue to learn from and grow on and just not do anymore, because it just doesn't make sense. I don't have any questions at this point. Councilman Conlon?
Yes, thank you. I had a constituent complain about, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks ago about some pretty serious vandalism at Morse Park. And I'm just wondering if anything has been done to prevent or alleviate the recurrence of that kind of a problem. Somebody evidently got in there with a car and just tore up one of the playing fields.
In December, before I left DPW, we had an incident with a young man in a car in there, and the PD did catch them. They wound up hitting one of the swing gates, so we were able to hit his insurance up for the gate repair money. Beyond that, I'm not. It sounds like it may have been the same incident.
May have been. I lose track of time. But all right, that leads to my other question: is how did he get into the ball field?
I'm not sure if he hopped the curb or if one of the swing gates was open, because there's multiple swing gates. That the facility is sort of a hodgepodge of gates because it's been gradually changed over the year. It went from having access from the Bloom Street side on Morris and also from the Beach Street side by Chicks. And they, over time, a swing gate was put in down on the Bloom Street end. A swing gate was put in up by the basketball court so that people could utilize the parking lot for the softball field separate from the rest of the Little League facility. And then a third swing gate was put in down by Chicks. And at times that one is not frequently locked because it's just for the softball field and you can't get into the park proper. But you don't even need a truck to jump a curb and tear something. If you really want to do some damage, it's not a difficult place to get into with a vehicle to vandalize, you know?
Well, why is it so easy to get in there? I mean, can't something be done to discourage that?
Well, I mean, just like I said, if you want to make a poor choice and vandalize, like the entire length of Morris Avenue from Thomas Street to Bloom Street, you could simply drive over the sidewalk. It's just a regular curb, and that keeps, you know, most people on the road and out of the facility. But someone who's looking to cause trouble is, you know, and I don't know that basically fencing, you know, completely enclosing every facility we have with a fence is the answer, because it would be really, really cost prohibitive. And you know, at the end of the day, we hate vandalism, but it's something that we deal with on a periodic basis. And
Well, it comes down to cost, I'm sure. I'm just wondering how much it costs to fix that field as opposed to the fence. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, you know, we had an incident down at Painter Park in Field 3 as well, and gate was hit, the car went in, car tore up the field, the kid got caught. It was about $1,800. And if you're talking about putting up like 6-foot chain link fence, I don't know that $1,800 might probably get you 30 or 40 feet of fence. Mm-hmm. So, and it's just, you know, the aesthetics and everything else, I think if we just stay as proactive as we can and keep our facilities as well lit as we can, you know, and then we have to address things immediately as they come up, I think is the best way to prevent this from happening.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have any questions? Councilwoman McGee?
I know this was sort of touched on, but I'm new, so I guess what I don't understand is like how and why we return grant money back to the state. Where do we go wrong when we're not using money for something like our basketball courts? Like, just to give you an example of how bad that basketball court is, like I saw a game over there, I saw a kid's shoe get stuck and he completely fell and he could have injured himself. So like, what are we doing wrong? Like, I just don't understand like how we're returning free money, and especially money that's supposed to be used to implement a change in our community for kids. So just from like my understanding, and I agree with Chairwoman Hosky when she said like, let's prevent this from happening again. But like, where do we go wrong? Like, if someone can just explain to me.
I think it was a lack of follow through. I don't know who got the grant originally. If they spoke to anyone in Park and Rec, I know the police department did use quite a bit of the funds because it is a DOJ grant for programs that they have to keep kids off the streets, out of gangs, provide other resources for them to use. I don't know that anyone ever followed through as far as how much money was spent when the grant was expiring. And the only notification that came out was when the grants writer was notified that, or someone was notified that grant would be ending, which the end of the final report needed to be done. Maybe
that person should have their pay docked $10,000, since that's what had to go back to the state. Thank you, Chairwoman.
You read my mind. Any other questions for Mark? So Mark, before you leave, I just want to say that, you know, I love the Park and Rec. The parks are near and dear to my heart. They are the, in my opinion, a necessity in the community. We've had many discussions in regards to what makes, you know, newly married couples getting ready to have a family is the education that a town can provide and the parks that they have. So please know that if there's ever anything that you need, I will be a driving force on this council to hopefully get you what you do need. I am very interested in, as Councilwoman Hamilton said, you know, McGee, that, you know, upgrading the parks and getting them where people can get out there and play, I think is going to be really important, especially once this pandemic is over. We need places to go. So if you can get your assessment done and let us know, we would greatly appreciate it. I do look forward to all of the upgrades that are going to be happening at the Nike site. I did send an email to the state rep, you know, talking about Quigley and, you know, hopefully trying to get some funding for that next year because that needs some serious upgrading as well. So we do thank you for your time and we hope that you and your staff stay safe and healthy.
Thank you all. We appreciate it.
Anytime. Beth, are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Mark.
Hi, thank
left
you.
the meeting.
We're so sorry for the late start. There might be a long-winded chairwoman on this. But if there's, well, we appreciate that. And we're so happy you're here. So generally what we've been doing is that, you know, you present or tell us anything that you'd like us to know. We then have a question and answer period where all the council will go around and ask a maximum of 2 questions. Just to help with feedback, we just, when we ask a question, we just ask that you mute yourself until you're getting ready to answer. And then when you're done, mute yourself again, and we're gonna do the same. It just helps with the back and forth and odd feed. So you can take it away when you're ready.
Okay, the first budget that I'll talk about is human resources. Human resources, I don't know if some of you know about it, but we do energy assistance. We do the improvements for substandard conditions for housing. We do relocations. We've always done the summer youth employment program, which unfortunately we don't even know if we're going to be funded on this year. I know that they are looking at it, and then if they do, we would have to look at creative ways of hiring as many youth and making sure that they are safe, that they are doing social distancing, because many of these youth have worked in the schools with the custodians, or they've worked at the community house or the VA hospital, or even on the beaches. So we are looking at that. We are waiting to hear from the state to see whether or not that program, in fact, will go forward. A question came up for Mark. We do the non-resident beach stickers. We've done them for the last couple of years. We charge $150 for each non-resident beach sticker. We get the beach stickers in January. People have the opportunity to buy them January through December. Last year, we raised about $7,500 for those beach stickers. The only other ones that we do are the stickers where somebody has to get a duplicate. They may have gotten a new car, they may have a cracked windshield, and so therefore we charge $10 for a replacement sticker. Those deposits go to the general fund, but they're recorded on the computer so that for every $10 that we take, it's matched up with a link to the tax department on the purchase of that sticker. As far as my budget, we haven't had too many changes. I will bring to your attention on page 86 of the budget book that if you go down, pretty much, okay, it's status quo until you get to the overtime. I reduced that from last year, and I looked at what costs were over the last 12 months and felt as though that we could reduce that number. The one that for the Memorial Day Parade, I will tell you, I did not request $0 for that, but I actually requested $4,000. That just happened to be a typo when it went into the book. I certainly believe, okay, that is one of our premier events to honor our veterans. And so $2,000 has been put into that budget to support that event going forward for next year. The band concerts are the same. The holiday festivities, we reduced by about $1,000. Again, I looked at the overall budgets and what was spent from last year and felt as though that we could go down to the $3,000 mark. The item under trees and shrubs, I requested $1,500. The recommendation was for $5,500. I spoke to Frank about this today as to why it went in at 55, and what he did was to average out what the expenditures were over the last 5 years, but I don't think that he realized that in 2017 there was a one-time allotment of $17,000 that Nick Ruckolt brought to the City Council, which was approved for the Sandy Point Bird Sanctuary. Certainly, okay, we could find uses for that $4,000, either for trees for our local parks or any kind of beautification for our local parks, which we could certainly, okay, link up with the Recreation Department. Client assistance is at $8,000, which it was and is a request for the present year. So I will field any questions that you might have concerning human resources.
Thank you so much, Beth. Do we have any questions? Councilman Bruno?
Thank you, Madam. Good evening, Beth. I got a question for you. Can you, benefits coordinator, can you explain what that position entails for $68,177?
All right. Can I explain that when we go to the personnel budget?
Okay, no problem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam.
Councilman Cohen, did you have a question?
Yes, I don't know if I can ask this now or if we're going to cover it later tonight. It was Beth Highs, Barry Cohen. I was wondering about elderly services. I had a question there. Would you be able to address that question now?
From the elderly services budget?
Yes.
Okay, I will try and answer it. That's a budget that normally Sharon Mancini puts together, but I'll certainly, okay, address it.
Yeah, and I can follow up separately with Sharon if I need to, but I noticed this with the Board of Education budget too, and it's just a curiosity to me. The transportation line, we have traditionally been between $240,000 and $260,000 as recently as this year, and I know that they put in $344,000, which is an $84,000 increase, and we still gave them a $20,000 increase more. So, I only say that because the Board of Ed, and I need to get further clarification, has also significantly increased their transportation budgets. Is there a particular reason? Is it just the quotes that we get in that the whatever bus companies or services that we use are going up on their costs. It just seems to be an outlier to me.
Well, we used to use a different company, which was a nonprofit, but they also received funding from the federal government and weren't able to use it anymore. So we had to go out to bid, and DATCO was our vendor of record. And consequently, okay, going to DATCO, it required a larger budget. That was unfortunate, but that is something, okay, that MARB requires that we go out to bid, and we should, because it is certainly over the $10,000. But unfortunately, there are very few that can transport the elderly and have the capacity from a handicap standpoint. And this is done through their vans. They take people, okay, certainly to the senior center. They run our Savin Rock trolley. It's not a trolley anymore, it's a bus. And they take people, okay, to medical appointments. And so, unfortunately, the cost goes up from one year to the next. And because there aren't that many vendors that bid on this, you have to go with what the bids come in, and DATCO was I believe, the only bidder at the time.
This leads to my second question. Whoops. Yeah, that just leads to my second question that, given that the original request was, let's put it this way, you're getting the request, the difference between the request and the mayor's recommendation is approximately $64,000 difference. And so I'm wondering, are we not going to be able to provide all the services and transportation trips that we did in the prior year? Because, this is not just a matter of just taking a few $1,000s off. It was a significant cut from the request. And I assume, and the request was made, I assume, from 260 to 344. I'm assuming was made based on the status quo or relative status quo of the services currently provided by the elderly services department. So I'm concerned about the elderly.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, you understand where I'm going. Thank you. You can answer that, address that.
Yeah, the truth is that I would have to, okay, and maybe Frank can answer this as far as what the transportation contracts are. I know that they were advertised. I know that they went out to bid. And I believe, okay, that they were multiple years. So maybe Frank can answer, okay, if he knows, okay, what those contract amounts were.
I don't have those figures in front of me. But the question I would have is I'd have to look at fiscal 19. Is fiscal 19 an anomaly at $339,000 when every other year never breaks 250?
Well, one of it, okay, was because of the other transportation company, okay, that we used, which was based in Hamden, and they were the ones, okay, that we always had a lower contract with, but because they received several dollars, they were not permitted, okay, to bid on the service. So that is probably why that is a little bit lower.
Yeah.
I can certainly get the contract figures, okay, tomorrow from Sharon Mancini or from finance, and I will let you know, Mr. Cohen.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, I guess my major concern is beyond the contracts, and I will follow up separately on this, is I just want to make sure that our elderly are taken care of. I know they rely very much on that transportation. I have many residents, as you know, in Morrissey Manor, and I hear about this quite often. So again, if it is more, or if the 280 is going to give us the status quo, fantastic. If it's not, and we have to sacrifice something, God forbid, I just want to be prepared to know what they may be so I can address it with the elderly population in my district. I do appreciate both of you. Yep. Thank you.
You know, I will certainly let you know if there's a reduction in service or whether or not that in fact is the way the contract came in. So I will get you those figures tomorrow.
Thank you so much, and thank you both. That's it for me. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does anyone else have any questions? Councilman Hamilton?
Good evening, Beth. How are you?
Good, and you?
Good, thank you. So just staying on that same transportation subject that Councilman Cohen brought up, since the seniors are now kind of shut in for a while, how is the contract made up, if you know? Is it something that we pay like just straight out, or are we saving any money since the transportation hasn't been running for a few weeks? Is there money in this budget left over?
Yes, there will be. We have obviously the what people refer to as the trolley, or the bus that does the loop in town that goes to the various locations, Stop and Shop and ShopRite and so on and so forth, okay? That is not on the road. Our senior centers are closed down, so there is no transportation going back and forth. And the truth is that I think I talked to Sharon today that it wasn't, I think April 6th was the last time that we in fact put the medical van on the road to take an elderly person, okay, to the doctor. So it's done on a daily basis. And so in theory, most of this transportation has been closed down since the middle of March.
So yes, there will be funds left over in this budget?
Yes, there will be.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Councilman Conlon?
But what is that?
Councilman Conlon, you didn't come across until the very end. You're probably gonna have to start over.
Oh, I'm sorry. Back on page 86, the client assistance. What exactly is that?
Client assistant is for people, okay, who come in and let's say that they need assistance with a down payment. They may be homeless and we need to put them up in a motel for a short period of time. It may be that their dwelling that they're renting has been declared uninhabitable. And so therefore, okay, we have to relocate them. Now, we partner this money up with a grant from CDA. And I always spend CDA's money first before I touch any of the city money. But I will tell you that one relocation will cost about $4,500. So $8,000 may seem like a great deal of money, but in theory, okay, it's not. If in fact you have a multiple burnout, if you have a multiple dwelling that there are code violations, you certainly, okay, ask the landlord to take the first step in providing alternative housing. But if they don't, the city is responsible. And then what you do is you place a lien on the property that was condemned in order to get your money back.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairwoman Hosky.
Anyone else? That is all the questions we had on that, Beth. Did you want to move? Go ahead.
Okay, so in personnel, the requests that I made were for normal, okay, it was a 0%
One
increase.
second, Beth, could you tell us what page you're on? Because so some of the new council members will know where you are.
I'm sorry, okay, it would be page 34. Okay, so the request for wages, there was an addition, a proposal for a benefits coordinator. And this position has been requested by MARB. It's certainly something that I believe is necessary. It will deal with the OPEB. It will hopefully, okay, coordinate all of the benefits throughout the city, which we have multiple. We have an individual, for instance, in the Allentown Fire Department that does a terrific job. And we have somebody at City Hall that does benefits for the city personnel. And then we have a individual over at the police department who fills in and does the benefits over there on an as-needed basis. But much of what needs to be done, I've been doing for the last 6 months. For instance, the personnel was in charge of putting everybody onto the state partnership plan. That was a very time-consuming. We started off in August in order to get all city employees, active city employees, except for the Allentown Fire Department, which is yet to be negotiated. But that was all city employees, both police department and the municipal side. So we started off in August in order to get them up and operational by December. That's all new cards, that's all new information, that's workshops, that's people signing up, that's getting all of their personal information in order to do that registration. In addition to that, we've taken on, which used to be done by a outside entity for retirees, and making sure that people are paying their cost share for their health benefits. We've highlighted those, okay, that are lagging behind, and I will tell you, with the cooperation of the Corporation Council, which has been incredible on this project, we have recouped a large number of back payments for benefits, but this is something that this coordinator, okay, should also be doing. They should be looking at all benefits and seeing whether or not there are other avenues, that there are possibly, okay, cheaper issues that we can be looking at, that making sure that when somebody leaves, that their names are taken off the system and that they don't remain, even though, okay, that they're no longer employees, or if somebody, okay, passes away in the family and that it was an employee plus one, that we change that number to reflect that, unfortunately, okay, there would be one person as opposed to two on the benefits. That, in all honesty, okay, is a job that needs to be done and coordinated with these three entities, meaning the police, the municipal side, and also the Allentown Fire Department.
So Beth, are you saying that when they would go, we pay up front and then we're reimbursed? So when you're saying this person, Lee was good at getting us monies that we were owed. So essentially the city's paying and waiting to be reimbursed.
Well, there is a cost share. All right. And so unfortunately, there was a break in service a number of years ago and people weren't being billed. And just like anything else, people didn't get a bill. They think that they didn't know it. Well, we've gone back the number of weeks and made sure that we came up with an amount that they had to do to be current. So people have been given, new invoices. Now, we've gone with a different company called Zenith. They will be billing outright. They will begin in May. We've given them all updated information. And I truly believe that going forward, that this will not be an issue that possibly, didn't have to happen in years past.
So thank you for that. This benefits coordinator, are you looking for this to be July 1st? Like when?
Yes, July 1st.
Tell me again?
Yes,
July
I would
1st.
hope that July 1st.
So how long does it take you to post a job, hire a job, and have the person report for work?
Well, it will depend, all right? It depends on how many people. We all know, that unfortunately, given the current situation, that there are a lot of people, that are out of work. Sometimes, when the economy is good, and you post something, you may not get as many applications as you would in the event such as this, where, the economy and unemployment is very high. But normally it would probably take, about a month and a half. So as soon as we know whether or not the money has been approved, we would then finalize, the job description. Again, part of this is also with the ADP and finding out what their needs are from an in-house standpoint, because that has to be put into the job description also. And then we will begin hopefully advertising and then be on board by the time of the new fiscal year.
Is this a union position?
That's yet to be determined.
So if it's a union position, someone might be able to just move into it.
Well, that's not exactly okay.
No, I know it's not exact, but it's a possibility.
You have to have the qualification in order, to assume the responsibility, and take the job.
Okay. So you won't be finalizing the job description until we settle on ADP and all of that comes.
Yes, my understanding is, is that the city is waiting for some information from ADP as far as what they expect from us from an in-house standpoint. And I do know, that MARB expects a certain responsibility, in this position, and as far as reporting and, like I said, OPED and so on and so forth. So yes, we will have to finalize the job description.
Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions for Beth regarding personnel? Chairman?
Hi, Beth. Just so I'm clear, so are there currently 3 positions that deal with city benefits now, and then this would be a coordinator of those three?
Well, right now, okay, you have one, okay, in the Allentown Fire Department. You have one, okay, in City Hall. And you have one in the police department that is used on an as-needed basis. There's going to be more than just people, okay, in each one of these locales, okay, feeding information to this individual for reports, for findings, whether it be for instance, okay, the state partnership. They are changing in September to, right now they're United Healthcare. They will be changing to Anthem. That is going to take a significant amount of work to coordinate that with the state to make sure that everybody gets new cards, that people are on board, that they understand, okay, if there's any changes, and so on and so on and so forth. All right, so they would work with those three other people, and then they would work with the finance department. They would work with certainly, okay, myself, and they would work with MARB. They would work with also, okay, ADP on what it is, okay, that they are looking from an in-house standpoint.
So we couldn't take those three others and combine them into this one position and add a little bit of money to it?
Oh. I would just find that very difficult. All right. Right now, it's difficult for Vivian, okay, to do all of the people, okay, on the municipal side. You know, Debbie takes care of all of the retirees and the active in the fire department in Allentown. And then Carla, all right, was taking care of all of the police officers. And one person, I would find it very difficult to be able, okay, to do all of that.
Okay. No, understood. I had asked that question though. Hey Frank, I have a question for you. So, are there any besides ADP? Is there any other outsourcing of this type, like HR or benefits besides what we're doing with ADP?
Yeah, the city, the contract with ADP covers the benefits side as well as payroll. Although you wouldn't be able to eliminate those three positions, it would certainly free up time for them to maybe take up some tasks that maybe they haven't had a chance to get around to. The software itself is more of a self-service software. So as the employee changes their healthcare coverage to add a new person, add a child, remove a child, if once they hit 26, they go to the site themselves, they update their own information, and the system updates all the profile and data information after that. So it would be less manual on the city side to maintain a lot of this data.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I'm all set.
Any other questions for Beth? Well, Beth, I want to thank you so much for joining us. That wraps up the evening with you. And I just want to say again to you as well that we do hope that you and your staff stay safe and stay healthy as we continue to battle through this pandemic.
I certainly wish that each and every one of you, along with your families, stay safe, stay healthy, and certainly, okay, take a moment to remember those West Haven residents who unfortunately have succumbed to the disease and the virus. I think Maureen was correct the other night when she said, unfortunately, they refer to them as data or statistics or cases. And they are individuals with families. And I think that we need to remember that. So if you would, at some point in time, just give them a moment of your time to think about them, I would appreciate that.
No, absolutely, and thank you for that. You are absolutely right. It, Chairman, do you want to? Oh, but no, absolutely. Thank you so much, Beth, and thank you for the reminder.
Okay, you all take care of yourself.
Thank
You
you,
as
Beth.
well. So, good night. So, council, this evening was action-packed. We have the library coming before us tomorrow.
Has left the meeting.
And then next week, we will start our deliberations. I just ask that if you haven't already, start working on your ideas on things that we can curb. We don't have a lot of time, so when we do start to deliberate, I would just ask that we are as, we just come together and kind of chug through and be concise and be succinct in our intentions so that we can get through. Why are you kicking? My dog just kicked me. I think it's 110 pages of budget. So if Councilman Johnston? Councilwoman Johnston, are you still there?
Sorry, I turned off instead of mute. I don't want to take up any more time tonight if that's whatever, but are you going to talk at some point about what those look like, deliberations or the process? Or are we literally just sitting here hashing it out? Is there a protocol in place for that? I don't know how that's different from when you used to meet in person, but not having ever done it before, it would help.
Absolutely. So what we would do is that we would ask that, well, I would ask that you come with your suggestions. Would ask that everybody stay curious and that it is a work in progress. I think that, you would come in and say how we would normally do it. We would meet as a whole, and then you could have different caucuses. Barry and Colleen can ask for a caucus, and then them go off and have a discussion. We as Democrats can have a caucus where we would go off and do some of the discussions offline amongst us, discussing different line items that we think should be cut, different line items that we think we want to add money to. And then we would come back as a whole, and you would basically, when we do like transfer line items, when we wanted to give money to the police department to get the handheld devices, we would say this line item, such and such, such and such, I want to subtract $10,000 and give it to this line item, such and such. We do stuff like that. And then at some point, we won't vote on the budget, but the chairman would then schedule another meeting to decide if we will pass or fail. And then he will schedule a meeting to discuss the mill rate. I don't, if we can't come to an agreement, what is the date, Chairman, that the mayor's budget would just go in automatically? It's generally the first. He wasn't even listening to me.
No, I was listening. I forgot to put my ear. Thank you. So first off, yeah, so when we deliberate, so in order to change a line item, we need 9 votes of the council. So that 9 votes to change any particular line item. Once we're done deliberating and we're satisfied with what the amended budget looks like, then yes, then I would schedule a special meeting for us to approve the budget as a whole, and set the mill rate. So if we do not make any amendments, or if we do make amendments and we don't pass the budget by majority, 7 votes, then the mayor's budget goes in by default. The date on that is typically the first Thursday of May. The governor has pushed that back to June the 30th. I spoke with the mayor and she is a little concerned about being able to send out the tax bills in a timely fashion. So I don't anticipate us going too much farther than the original date if we do it all. So I would think we would button this up by the first or second week of May at the latest.
That is, yes, my thought as well, that hopefully we do all the preliminary work before we come in, and it's more of a just, this is my suggestion, let's do this. This is my suggestion, let's do that. And it takes 9 votes. So my thought is that between the 4 meetings, I don't want to, and I'm just letting you know that we generally would come in, and my thought is that next Tuesday and Thursday, we would work from 6 to 8. I don't want to go to 12 o'clock at night. I want to, respect everybody's time. So it's more of the more efficient we can be, the quicker this will, we will be able to get through this. I would imagine that we will have a Democratic caucus, probably Tuesday or Thursday. I'm not sure if Colleen and Barry when they will speak, but I'm imagining we will do that, but hopefully we will have everything. My goal is to be done and with the chairman and have everything to the tax office so that they can get the bills out, because I think the residents are going to want to know as soon as possible, because the fire, I know the shore, I think, and Councilman Bruno, tell me if I'm wrong, they're voting on the Shores Fire Department on the 1st or the 5th, and then the Center District is the 1st.
So we are voting on Friday.
On Friday. Okay. And then the Center District, their fire commissioners are voting on the 5th. So all of that will be wrapped up early as well so that the tax bills can go out. Any other questions? Did that answer? Was that you're good, Councilman Massaro?
May I ask the reason why we're seeing the library again tomorrow?
Because I'm hoping that they were going to come back with really good news with regard to furloughs, and after us suggesting that they do that. So I want to possibly hear that answer, even though I know they didn't furlough anybody. I am interested in that.
Okay. I feel disappointed.
Councilwoman Finelli?
Just a quick question about one more meeting. The last schedule that Mike DeMassa sent us said we were having deliberations this Thursday as well. Is that what we're doing?
An error.
Okay, so it's just Tuesday, Thursday next week. Thank you.
Tuesday, Thursday, and then Tuesday, Thursday if we need it. I just thought that we needed a break and probably time to absorb this and kind of go through it. If anyone does have any questions, please do not hesitate you can reach out to me, the chairman, to get your answers. But I just wanted to make sure everyone had time to really absorb it all and go through it and see if you had any thoughts or suggestions around it, so that when we came back, it would be more efficient. You know what I mean? Frank? No, I'm just waiting on you in case somebody else says something you might want to talk to. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you go into deliberations, I strongly and respectfully suggest that you listen to the recording of today's MARB meeting. That will give you some insight into their position on this current budget and their thinking along those lines. So that's all I had to say.
No, that is much appreciated. Thank you. That is a great suggestion. I assume that we all do generally listen to it, but that is a great reminder. Thank you so much. Did anyone else want to say anything before I give the floor to the mayor? Go ahead, Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. I concur exactly what Frank just said about listening to the meeting. The meeting was pretty disheartening, I would say. And the reason I'm saying that is because we worked very hard, Frank and I. We've been working on this budget since December, and with the department heads and all the departments and all the changes in this budget that honestly are more changes, restructuring than I've seen in many, many years. That being said, we brought forward a balanced budget. We tried to address all of the issues that MARB, has asked for in the past. We had a grand list growth. So the grand list growth, along with the 0.8 mil, would give the revenue required. But today, the secretary and others stated that that was not going to be enough of a tax increase, and they wanted more. And I asked, well, what number? Because just to say more, what is more? And they want a full mill. They feel that because next year is an election year, that no one will have the appetite to increase taxes next year or increase what needs to be done. And I had to point out that last year was an election year and taxes were increased. However, it fell on deaf ears. I'm sorry to say. I pushed back as much as I can. I am extremely disappointed because on one hand, they acknowledge that, people are suffering, people are losing their jobs and everything else. And then I also added, because I don't know if they knew this, but CCM had put out to all the municipalities, and I don't know who responded or not, but their information to the municipalities was that most municipalities are either flatlining their taxes or lowering their taxes a little bit. And when I told them that, again, no change in any of this. So it is very, very upsetting. I felt that the 0.8 mils was what was necessary with the grand list growth. I don't want, or do I think we should have to increase to a full mill, given that I also explained to them too the status of our fire departments, which they're well aware of because they've met with the fire departments. And Center District is going up a mill and West Shore is going up 3/4 of a mill. So these are, big numbers going into all of that. That being said, we left there with that they wanted this. Now, the reason I'm so worried about the timeline is because if we did it on the 7th, that would give me some time. And what I mean by that is we've got to go back to them before we set a mill rate, or we're going to find ourselves, you know what I mean? I got to know where the council kind of is. And I don't want to have to do it, last minute, because each year there's always been a problem, a hiccup at the end, because they want certain things that, they didn't get, or we have to go back and forth with the council. So the sooner that the council can finish deliberations, it would be greatly, greatly appreciated, because it give Frank and I a little breathing room to kind of go back and forth. I explained to them too that the council and myself, we were looking for alternate revenue, sources, not just, tax increases, and that the council really didn't even want the 0.8 mil, and, neither did I. I mean, this wasn't something that we wanted to do. But once again, I left there with the orders, and Frank can jump in if I'm misstating anything, but they wanted a full mill increase. And then what really shocked me, because after the last 2 years, they had commented on how much we had cut and there wasn't any more to cut. And now it was like, well, and you can cut something too. The problem with cutting, though, is no matter how much you cut, they're not going to allow that to lower your mill rate. They want the mill increase. So they want us to cut and they want the mill increase. So I suggest, so that everybody, if you do have time, the meeting was, it was long, but the end half is more about the HR stuff, the end 15, 20 minutes. The first hour, hour and a half is all pretty much about the budget, the 5-year plan, what the expectations are. They think that we're looking to stay under MARB rule longer, which I had to correct them with that. That's absolutely not true. And the sooner we can get out, the better off all of us will be. So if there's any questions that I can answer, but I do ask all of you, if you have the time in your schedule, please, please, please go and watch the full meeting. And if there's any questions that you want me to facilitate, I would be happy to do so. Thank you.
So, I got nothing. I do. Chairman.
Listen, I don't want to start a whole discussion of 13 council people and the mayor at this hour, but I really need to get a better answer why the MARB is expecting this council and this mayor to raise the taxes even more than, oh, well, next year is an election year and we can't count on you to do what you're supposed to do then. After we have residents at food banks, and we have people that need shelter, and that we have an unemployment rate that's going to be close to 20% in this state, and yet we're just going to forget all about that and just raise taxes because we may not be able to raise them next year in an election year. And to me, that's not a valid reason to raise taxes. And it just really upsets me to think that we have citizens here that are hungry and don't have a place to live and are out of a job. And yet arbitrarily, we need to raise the tax because maybe next year we won't. That is very, very, very disheartening and shows that people are out of tune with what's going on in these communities. So I'll leave it at that, but I'm not in a position to I'm looking the other way right now. And that's just me. There's 9 votes to this council and we'll continue to deliberate. But at the end of the day, we have a community that we're responsible for, and that community is hurting. And I'll do everything in my powers to make sure we ease that pain. And I need a whole lot better reason that we need to go more up on taxes, and because we may not have the fortitude to do it next year. Thank you.
Well, I don't even, 1 second, Councilman, I'm in myself because these people don't even know me and think that so that I can be reelected, I won't raise taxes. Like that makes no sense. You're questioning my integrity and everything as if our residents are just stupid. I'm so glad I don't have to talk to these people. Councilman Massaro, go ahead.
So my question to the mayor and Frank, no matter what we do here, the Marbury's going to do the same thing they did last time. We set a mill rate. Even if we set a mill rate at 0.8, they're going to go up on the mill anyways and throw it out. So like I said in the beginning, I don't like these people. They're rich, pompous idiots and assholes, as far as I'm concerned, that they're totally out of control. And 3 of them don't even belong there because they put their own cities broke and they're breaking our chop. When I agree with what Ronnie said, that we got people hurting. I got people in my own area here that are not working, that they might even lose their job because we decide we're going to do this another month. It's totally ridiculous what's going on in this country, which I just can't believe it. There's a lot of people hurting here, and these people want to raise taxes. Tell the governor you better get rid of him, or say he's not going to be there next time. That's all I got to say. I'm disgusted.
Does anyone else have anything else to say? Comments? 2 mills. How exciting. Thank you, everybody. I know it's really late. I'm going to go have some dinner. I haven't eaten yet. So we will be recessing until tomorrow at 6 p.m. Stay well, wash your hands, and don't think about the tax increase. You won't be able to go to sleep tonight. Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.